All right, let's get into it. What are the 22 laws, 22 immutable laws of marketing? Law number one is called the law of leadership. All right. And the subheading here is it's better to be first than it is to be better. The book goes on to say the basic issue in marketing is creating a category you can be first in. It's the law of leadership. It's better to be first than it is to be better. It's much easier to get into the mind first than to try to convince someone you have a better product than the one or I'm sorry, it's much easier to get into the mind first than to try to convince someone you have a better product than the one that did get there first. So a really great example of this, and we talked about it on the earlier stream we did on TikTok today, is McDonald's. McDonald's is not anywhere near the best in their industry for what they produce. In fact, I would argue that McDonald's is one of the worst in terms of putting out a horrible product. But they are number one. And the reason why they're number one is they got into the mind first. They are the hamburger joint. And there's all kinds of new hamburger joints that have been sprouting up, and there's places like Fuddruckers that are delicious or whatever. But at the end of the day, McDonald's sign on the arches says billions and billions sold. And the reason why is because they got there first. And in their slight defense, their product wasn't always trash. That came later. Now it's just crack for little children, and that's why it's still open. And they, pump billions of dollars into marketing every single year. Right? You can demonstrate the law of leadership by asking yourself two questions. Right? And this is a great analogy. It's actually what this picture, it's going to explain what this picture is here on the book and for my TikTok fam over here. What is the name of the first person to fly the Atlantic Ocean? Do you know who the first person was to fly across the Atlantic Ocean? Put that answer in the comments if you know. All right, and I'm going to give last call for everybody on TikTok. Click on my profile, click on the play button, and come on over to YouTube because I'm going to be shutting this down here in a hot second. Do you guys know who the first person to fly across the Atlantic Ocean in a plane was? Does anybody know that? Peggy's here. What's up, Peggy? Good to see you. All right, looks like there's no answers in the comments, so I will, and YouTube's usually about 30 seconds behind, so I'm trying to give everyone a chance to answer. And just a reminder, everybody on TikTok, we're live on YouTube. I'll be shutting the TikTok stream down here momentarily. So definitely click on my profile, click the play button, and slide on over to YouTube and come hang out with us. And this is for anyone that hasn't heard me talk about it for the last couple of days. This is an effort I am executing to try to not get my TikTok channel banned because apparently I said something that pissed them off. All right, Amelia Earhart. Okay, so she wasn't the first person. She's going to come up in a second, though. That's a great guess. Right? The first person to fly across the Atlantic Ocean was Charles Lindbergh. Right? But hold that Amelia Earhart comment because that's really cool that you said that. That's going to come up here in a second. What was the name of the second person to fly the Atlantic Ocean? Nobody should know the answer to that. Right? The second person to fly the Atlantic Ocean solo was Bert Hinkler. Bert was a better pilot than Charlie Lindbergh. He flew faster. He consumed less fuel, yet who has ever heard of Bert Hinkler? He left home, and Mrs. Hinkler hasn't heard from him since. All right, so in spite of the evident superiority of the Lindbergh approach, most companies go the Bert Hinkler route. They wait until the market develops, then they jump in with a quote-unquote better product, often with their corporate name attached. It's today's competitive environment. A Me Too product with a line extension name has little hope of becoming a big profitable brand. Right? And we'll get to that. We'll get to the law of line extension in chapter 12. All right? So we're going to talk about Amelia Earhart here in chapter 2. So hang tough. All right, so the bottom line is, and keep in mind, just getting first to the market doesn't necessarily guarantee that win, right? And I'll give you an example. Charles Lindbergh may have been the first person to try to fly across the ocean, but if he had crashed and died, you wouldn't remember him as well, and nobody remembered him anyway, but you wouldn't remember him as much as the dude that actually succeeded at it. Right? Who lost the first Super Bowl ever? You know, that was what? That was before all of us were born, by the way. So, who lost the very first Super Bowl? But most people could probably name the team that won the very first Super Bowl, right? So, just being first doesn't mean you win. Otherwise, MySpace, or really Friendster, would be killing it online right now, right? And then MySpace and Facebook would all be the number 2 companies. But it's the company that gets into the mind of the customer, the mind of the consumer first as the producer of the thing that they want. All right, so that's very important when we're talking about being the leader in a market. Doesn't mean that you were the first to the market. Other people tried to fly across the Atlantic Ocean, right? Or like the Wright brothers, they weren't the first ones to try to make an airplane. All right, law number 2. This is where Amelia Earhart's going to come into play. And this should be encouraging because the first law can be somewhat discouraging if you're just getting started in business because you're like, well, how do I become first? I'll show you. Law number 2 is the law of category. If you can't be first in a category, set up a new category you can be first in. Right? So what's the name of the third person to fly the Atlantic solo? If you didn't know Bert Hinkler was the second person to fly the Atlantic, you might figure you had no chance at all to know the name of the third person. But you do know her. Her name is Amelia Earhart. Right? Now, is Amelia known as the third person to fly across the Atlantic Ocean? Absolutely not. She's the first woman to do it. Now, you see how that works? She wasn't ever going to be the leader in the first person to fly across the Atlantic Ocean, but she could create a second category. And in creating a second category, she becomes the first woman to do it. Right? Like my uncle, whose video I posted during the last day, it was February 29th. I posted that interview of my uncle, which actually just recently happened. That wasn't old footage. That was shot a couple days before I posted it. My uncle was the first black aircraft carrier commander, right? He was commanding the Midway in Vietnam. And he's famous because of what he did to save somebody's life, right? He's not the first aircraft carrier commander, but he is the first black aircraft carrier commander. And if you go to the African American History Museum, you will see a picture of him and my father next to each other in the book that's next to the big giant Colin Powell display. Right? So he wasn't the first, but he's known as the first black person to do it. You see how that works? So in your business, you don't have to be the first person to do something. Think if you were, let's say, an artist, right? You don't have to be the first artist to do a particular thing, but you may be the first anime artist, right? Or the first, like if you're a musician, you're not going to be the first person to go platinum, but you may be the first hip hop artist, right? Or the first Helter Skelter artist to go platinum, right? So think of it from that perspective. How can you be first, and how can you create a new category that you can be first in? When you launch a new product, the first question you to ask yourself is not, how is this new product better than the competition? That's almost what everybody does. Because I watched a lot of YouTubers, especially the ones I used to coach, say, well, you know, this person makes better content than this other person. Why aren't they winning? And it's because they didn't get into the mind of the people first, right? I'm sure everybody knows who PewDiePie is if you're in the YouTube space. And everybody can probably name somebody they think is a better creator than PewDiePie. But PewDiePie, Felix, for the love of Christ, was the first person in that horror comedy video game category. So he is going to be in first place essentially forever. As long, and there's obviously exceptions to the rule, like where a company, you find out that they're, you know, hiring children slaves or something, and then they get knocked out of the first place. But usually if the company keeps its nose clean, they stay in the first place position. Right? And usually the number 2 company behind them always does about half the business of, like, that's how big the gap is between the number 1 company. Like if you look at Coke and Pepsi, Coke does, you know, Pepsi does basically half of the business that Coca-Cola does, or at least it used to be that way. Those brands have extended so much now. When we get to law number 12, that statistic may no longer be true. But when you launch a new product, the first question to ask yourself is not, how is this new product better than the competition? But the question should be, first, what? In other words, what category is this new product first in? So my coaching program, the Good Life Playbook, it's not the first coaching program and it's not the first Netflix. But it is the first Netflix. I'm working to develop it to be the first Netflix for personal and professional development for entrepreneurs. Right? There's all kinds of online courses and different things you can take, but I'm working to build the first Netflix-like platform for entrepreneurs who need personal and professional development, right? That's so I won't be the first Netflix, I won't be the first Hulu, I won't be any of that, but I'll be the first, hopefully, brand associated with coaching and teaching entrepreneurs how to take command of their lives and how to take command of their businesses, right? That's kind of our focus with that product, right? So forget the brand, think categories. Prospects are on the defensive when it comes to brands. Everyone talks about why their brand is better. If you don't believe me, just listen to Apple fans talk about how awesome Apple products are when functionality-wise, they're some of the worst pieces of everything on the planet. Like, I am not a fan of Apple products. I think from a functionality standpoint, PCs are way better and way less expensive. And even phones, the Apple phone, this is the last Apple phone I'm going to probably own, because I don't want to go through Apple's Nazi regime system and have to use all their crap. And I think a lot of their software is garbage, like iTunes. Well, when iTunes went mobile, it's okay. But using desktop iTunes, it's like I deleted it off all my computers because it's trash. Right? Everyone talks about why their brand is better, but prospects have an open mind when it comes to categories. Everyone is interested in what's new. Few people are interested in what's better. Okay, so when you guys hear me talk about the Good Life Playbook coaching program, you'll hear me say it is the Netflix for entrepreneurs looking for personal and professional development. All right, you'll hear me say that quite a lot. All right, number 3 is the law of the mind. It's better to be first in the mind than to be first in the marketplace. And that's what we were talking about in law number 1, right? The law of the mind. So everyone on TikTok, last notification, last warning, we're going to be shutting TikTok down and moving everything over to YouTube. So click on my profile, click on the play button underneath my face, and come on over to YouTube and hang out with us. All right, before we get into number 3, I'm going to give you all a chance to do that while I take some comments and questions here. Tanya Sweet says, hi, I'm Tanya Sweet from TikTok. Now you know what I look like. Hey, Tanya, what's up? What year was this book published? What his wife went. So the book was published in 1993. This book is like 30 years old. Yes, it is. AJS says, thank you for your service. Please let me know how I can add value to you and any of your organizations. One real simple way to add value is to give us all of your money. But just spread the word about the good. And if you don't want to give us all your money, which I totally understand why you wouldn't want to do that, absolutely spread the word about the good we're doing to people that you think would benefit from it. Shauna Carne says, hey, brother, Nashville in the house. Yep, cool. So remember, everybody on TikTok, jump onto YouTube. And if you don't know where my YouTube is, click on my profile, click the play button, because we're getting ready to shut it down on TikTok and just stream on YouTube tonight. And I don't want to leave you guys behind. Channel made it to the live. Sweet. So the law number 3 of the 22 immutable laws of marketing, which if you're just tuning in, that's what we're talking about here, is how to help you all do better marketing. Law number 3 is the law of the mind. It's better to be first in the mind than to be first in the marketplace. Think back to the Facebook story that I told. Facebook becomes the biggest social media platform in the history of Earth, but they were not the first to market. They just were the first one in people's minds. When you said social media, you meant Facebook. Right? MySpace held that place for a little while, but Facebook got to the market with a much different category. MySpace was a wild, wild west free-for-all of debauchery and bedlam. Facebook was a private, safe place where you could connect with old friends. All right, that's why they won. Is something wrong with the law of leadership in Chapter 1? No, but the law of the mind modifies it. It's better to be first in the prospect's mind than to be first in the marketplace, which, if anything, understates the importance of being first in the mind. Being first in the mind is everything in marketing. So if you mess up law number 3, you can forget about being first in your market. And if you are in business, your goal absolutely should be to be first in your market, period. And if you can't, then you need to create a different market. You can't change a mind once it's made up, right? Just look at all the people on social media arguing about their politics. Right? Once their mind's made up that this person's evil or this person's good, they're going to all scream at each other. Which they're really, I always say, people arguing like that are just screaming at themselves, because it's not like the person you're yelling at and calling an idiot's like, you know what, you are right. This whole time I should have voted for Fred Flintstone. I can't believe you told me I'm an idiot and I don't know anything, and God, you are absolutely right. Fred Flintstone 2020. You know what I mean? You're just screaming at yourself. You're wasting your energy. And it's that screaming is because people tend to live in the primitive part of their brain, which is the emotional part. There's no rationality. You're not trying to reason with anybody. You're trying to scream at a person that doesn't come from your tribe because you're threatened by them. Right? You fear that their ideology is somehow going to infringe upon your ability to get access to scarce resources and personnel. Right? That's the general fear, or ultimately leads to someone's death. That's the fear that all us tribal animals run around with. Even though we live in a modern world where that's not likely to happen, our brains haven't evolved for the modern world that we live in. The single most wasteful thing you can do in marketing is to try to change a mind. That accounts for the misery of well-informed opinion that can almost instantly appear in a person's mind. Okay? The law, number 4, the law of perception. Marketing is not a battle of products, it is a battle of perceptions. There are no best products. Now, and I'll give you an example. When I made that comment about how I think a lot of Apple software is garbage, but they also have amazing software too. They do have some software pieces that I think are outstanding, like Logic. Logic is freaking phenomenal, or it was when I used to produce music. I used to do it on Logic. All the Apple fans went nuts about, and they can come up with 411 reasons why Apple products are better than PC, and blah blah blah. Even if I could show them like studies that test measurable attributes of a computer and its price point versus efficiency versus functionality of software, but so, and then Apple people will always revert back to, well, it just works. Like, okay. Gotcha. And by the way, I'm not actually objectively saying that PCs are better than Macs. That's just my own personal. I don't like Macs. I'm not a fan. And the iPhone does a lot of things wrong for a long time that I'm just eventually like, all right, the Samsung I used to have had this figured out back literally 4 years ago, and iPhone still can't figure it out, so I'm out. Or it's not that they can't figure it out, it's just they're not dealing with it. So there are no best products, and you got to get that in your head. You're not going to be the best product in the market. You're going to be perceived as the best product in the market. Marketing is a manipulation of those perceptions. Only by studying how perceptions are formed in the mind and focusing your marketing programs on those perceptions can you overcome your basically incorrect marketing instincts, which again is, I have the best product. If you guys saw that TikTok video I did where I was reading from The Wizard of Ads, which was on my desk. Did I put it back? I don't see it. Oh, here it is. When I was reading from this book here called The Wizard of Ads, in fact, I'll just read it to you again because I think it bears repeating for this particular lesson, this particular law. So it's called the mousetrap myth, and this is what most businesses get wrong. Right? If a man can make a better mousetrap than his neighbor, the world will make a beaten path to his door. So said Ralph Waldo Emerson. Sorry, Ralph, but you're wrong. 46 years after you died, the better mousetrap was invented, and path beating did not occur. In 1928, Chester M. Woolworth offered the world a much improved mousetrap. It sold for 12 cents. The price of the older, less effective mousetrap, however, was only 5 cents. The better mousetrap failed. But why? What neither Emerson nor Woolworth realized is that once a mouse has been caught, most people dispose of both the mouse and the trap. No one wants to throw away a trap that costs 2.5 times as much to replace. Even less does anyone wish to clean and reuse it. Okay, so this idea of my YouTube channel is better than PewDiePie and nobody watches me. It doesn't matter if your channel, even if you could prove that objectively, the facts are that people do not perceive you as better. You do not give them as much joy, happiness, or dopamine inside their primitive little brains that makes them want to keep watching foolishness. Right? So a lot of you artists, especially musicians, uh, artists, that your argument is I make something better than fill in the blank. That's you trying to tear someone else down to make yourself look better. That never ever works except with other people who have loser mentalities. All right, it's never going to work that way. Yes, you do need to make something amazing, but what you need to do is make something amazing that specifically, and this doesn't just go for artists, I'm talking to business owners obviously too, but you have to make something that's amazing, that's personally tailored to a specific group of people, right? And I'm not talking about just demographics. You have to make something that is solving a problem for a big enough market of people in a way that PewDiePie or someone else isn't. Some of the best business advice I ever got was at a seminar. It was actually, I was at a public speaking seminar where I was trying to sharpen my skills as a public speaker. And the guy that was up there teaching was saying, you know, you can't sell certain types of things as a public speaker. You know, from the stage, you shouldn't try to sell, and he started naming stuff. And he says the only person that can sell stuff like that is Tony Robbins. And the reason why is because Tony Robbins is a household name at this point, because he was doing infomercials for God knows how long in the 80s and 90s. And then in the early 2000s, he did that movie with Jack Black called Shallow Hal. That was the movie that actually put Tony Robbins on the map. To the regular Americans. A lot of us already knew who he was. But the point being, his brand allows him to get away with selling a product called Date with Destiny. Like, who else? And I remember the guy got finished saying that, and I raised my hand. He's like, what's your question? I said, what if you wanted to be the next Tony Robbins? And he thought, and I thought he was going to clown me, you know, kind of like, dude, you're an idiot. But he looks at me, he's like, find something that Tony Robbins isn't doing that you're dope at and do that. I was like, great advice. Outstanding, right? And I immediately went to Tony Robbins' website, started going through it. I was like, he doesn't have stuff for military veterans. He doesn't do things specifically for teaching people how to build relationships to be married. So I took it on this same whiteboard, it was in a different office, or it may have been a different whiteboard because I've had a couple of them, but I started taking all these notes about all the things. If I was going to make, let's say, Tony Robbins my number one competitor, where can I fill in the gaps for the things that he's not doing? And I found tons of stuff. Right, and here we are. Only by study. And so, for example, going back to the law of leadership and the law of category, how do I differentiate myself from Tony Robbins, for example? Because he does personal and professional development for entrepreneurs. That's his focus. How am I different? I focus on entrepreneurs that come from the military. Right now, do I only work with those types of people? Absolutely not. But that is who my message is catered towards. And if you notice the way I talk, the way I carry myself, it's very military. It's very unfiltered. I'm not a warm, touchy-feely, huggy person. I just told a person today on an earlier live stream that was asking me about relationship problems, about how people in this world are fake and all this stuff. And I told them straight up, stop watching TV, turn off the news, and stop getting your relationship ideas and advice from Hollywood and movies and Netflix, and learn from scientists and really smart people and other folks who've been married quite some time who are happy. Learn the truth. And I said, you'll have to excuse my French, but if you believe that a relationship can last long term, I said, and this is exactly what I said, if you think my wife and I have been happily married for 17 years based on romance, you are out of your fucking mind. Is exactly what I said. Sorry, TikTok, if that is part of the banned language, but that is a different zone. So I can use that type of language because the people that I'm working to attract are warrior type people. They're not easily offended people. There are people who tell me all the time, like, you know, you don't really use foul language a lot. Well, first of all, I don't believe in foul language, but continue. But when you do, it kind of grates me when I listen to you, and I'm like, I understand that and I respect it. But you are also not my target audience. If you are easily offended, you're not my target audience, right? Tony Robbins' focus is entrepreneurs, generic, but he can get away with that because he's a household name. It's like McDonald's. McDonald's can start selling ice cream cones. Well, they do sell ice cream cones. That was a bad example. McDonald's can start selling pizza again if they wanted to and get away with it. But the stuff that I create is geared towards people who have had to see death up close and personal. So they're not offended if I drop an F-bomb every once in a while. Got it? All right, so that's how those two things come together. Looks, let's see. Each of us looks at the world through a pair of eyes. If there is objective truth out there, how would we know it? Marketing is a battle of perceptions, not products. Marketing is the process of dealing with those perceptions. You believe what you want to believe. You taste what you want to taste. And so the case study they give you before that statement is people that argue that Coke and Pepsi taste better. It's pretty much the same stuff, guys. And all the Coke fans, no, it's not. Ah! It's like, okay. All right. Marketing is not a battle of products. It is a battle of perceptions. And the reason why I keep reading that is because they repeated it that many times in the book. If they're saying it that many times, probably a good idea to pay attention to that idea. All right. Oh, shucks. My man Nick is here. Thank you for your service, says Pity Lover. All right, last call. Moto says, not offended at all, my brother. I know you're not, man, because you come from the band of brothers. All right, so last call on TikTok. We're going to be shutting down here in about 30 seconds or less. Make sure you come over to YouTube and get on the YouTube stream because I'm going to shut this down. All right? Number 5 in the 22 immutable laws of marketing is the law of focus. Okay, the most powerful concept in marketing is owning a word in the prospect's mind. All right? A company can become incredibly successful if it can find a way to own a word in the mind of the prospect. Go back to what I said about my coaching program in the law of category. It's the Netflix of personal and professional development for entrepreneurs, specifically for military veteran entrepreneurs. Okay? So owning that word, like I'm going to Netflix and chill. Netflix becomes a verb. I'm going to Google something is another example of the law of focus, right? When you can own a word in somebody's mind, the word becomes synonymous with the action you do using the product or the service. I'm going to Google something, right? I need a Kleenex. It's not there's no such thing as a Kleenex. That's the brand name. It's a tissue. Right? I need a Kleenex. This is the law of focus. You burn your way into the mind by narrowing the focus to a single word or concept. Oh, okay. So the notice I got wasn't TikTok being mad at me. It's that apparently I'm using too much memory. Do I have a lot of apps open? Moto, join us over on YouTube so you can pick my brain. I think my phone's having some issues here. I'm going to have to shut down. And nobody heard any of that because I turned off the screen. Hey, Moto, click on my profile, click on the play button, and come on over to YouTube so you can ask your question. It'll also let you write a lot more words than TikTok will. All right. The most effective words are simple and benefit-oriented. No matter how complicated the product, no matter how complicated the needs of the market, it's always better to focus on one word or benefit rather than 2 or 3 or 4. Right? Crest, what's the word associated with Crest? Cavities. Mercedes, engineering. BMW, driving. Volvo, safety. Domino's, home delivery. Pepsi-Cola, youth. Nordstrom, service. All right? Nothing lasts forever. There comes a time when the company must change words, right? So think about Bill Gates as a brand. He was Microsoft first. Now he's like the philanthropist, disease killer, right? He's trying to eradicate disease. The essence of marketing is narrowing the focus. You become stronger when you reduce the scope of your operations. You can't stand for something if you chase after everything. All right, so that's the law of focus. And that's something that's particularly hard to do for entrepreneurs and artists because you're idea people, right? Especially entrepreneurs who are artists. It is very hard to get focused because you get flooded with ideas, and picking the one that you're going to focus on is sometimes really hard to do. Now, that doesn't mean in the short term that you don't take the opportunity to experiment with a couple of different things before you land on a focus. That's okay. But then when you land on the focus, you go hard in the paint. All right, so that's good. Let's break for some comments here, and then we'll get to law number 6, which is the law of exclusivity. All right, TikTok, I'm shutting down. Click on my profile. Click on the play button. Come hang out with us on YouTube. It's been a pleasure kicking it with y'all. I will see TikTok on the next one. YouTube, hang tight. All right. We still got a rack of people to show up on the TikTok stream tonight. TikTok has been dead today. It started showing me videos from 2 weeks ago. I'm like, I don't watch that many videos on this platform. I know I didn't burn through all that much stuff. All right. Here we go. Channel says, made it to a live. AGS says, LOL, once I earn it, we shall collaborate. Well, what do you need to earn? Send me an idea, man. We can make something happen. Raymond Goodwin says, Sydney, Australia. Josh says, I need to improve my Facebook profile. Channel says, or is it Chanel? Should I be calling you Channel or Chanel? I want to make sure I'm getting that right. I'm really a stickler for making sure I don't F up people's names because I want to show you all the proper respect. Channel says, complete counterintuitive. You talking about relationships? Josh says, Fred Flintstone 2020. Dang, am I that behind in the comments that you guys are back? That comments back when I made the president joke? PC was much easier to navigate. Oh, you're talking about the phone, the Apple product. Yeah, I don't like Apple products. I'm just not part of that clan of let's make lackluster software and make it look pretty so the world gets addicted to it and yells at everyone that likes functionality. Chanel says PC was much easier to navigate than Mac personally for me. Yeah, and so I've used both. When I was doing music production, I used Mac a lot, and you do get used to it. But there's just like I remember developing websites, like when I was still making music and running my web, because my business started at my media company started as a web design company, a web development company, right? And I remember when I switched to Mac, because I was still doing my artist stuff on the side. It was, I just remember struggling to navigate stuff all the time, and it was just like, why? Like the music production was awesome, but I couldn't even get an FTP platform without paying for it on Mac. Like how do designers swear by Macintosh computers and I can't even FTP without buying $30 software? And for non-computer nerds, FTP is file transfer protocol. It means uploading files from either a server or my computer onto the server that displays my website. Like Mozilla now makes, what's it called? It's a Mozilla product that does it now, but back in those days that didn't exist. And I just remember bitching about, are you kidding me? I gotta buy an FTP software because on a PC you could just do it from Internet Explorer. You could configure Internet Explorer to create a folder on your desktop that became your website, and then I could literally run my website off my desktop if I had a computer that had enough horsepower. But Macs, nah. And then the software they had wasn't even, it was a pain in the butt to use. Jalen Ferguson says, so once you gain space in someone's mind, you trust and maybe loyalty if the first impression was good. Yes. So as a business, you want to always be working to establish trust and rapport with your customers, right? So if, let's say, because one of the reasons why I pick on McDonald's because they have a crap product, but one of the reasons why they get away with that, what is it, 70 years later, is because it wasn't always that way. They used to make a dope product where people would show up, get their little malt milkshakes, 50 years before all of us were born. And they'd get good hamburgers that were made by the McDonald's brothers. But once it became a machine, eventually the machine starts, like, just find any restaurant you have that's one of your favorite places to eat and watch it become a chain. Give it 15 years, the food will suck. It's just the way it is. And so what you need to do as a business, especially in the short term, is be the McDonald's from the 1950s, where you have a dope product and you have a dope system that lets you deliver that product and make your customers happy without them going through a lot of pain to do it. And yes, having that good first impression is going to help them trust you. So like one of the things, if you want to use, I talk about my Good Life Playbook coaching program, right? One of the things that I do is I used to run all of that through an online funnel that just did everything for me, just so it can convert customers without me having to do it. But what I learned by experimentation was when you launch a beta program, don't run the customers through the top of funnel automated, so the thousands or however many thousands of people see it will get on the list, and it'll send the initial email automated. But what that email tells them to do if they're interested is to email back, is to respond. So the first thing that tells the customer is, oh, even if this is an automated response, it's not one of those no reply shady, I just joined your newsletter and you're going to send me 70 emails every single day to try to get me to buy something from you. Like it's, oh, it wants me to respond, which then tells the customer I'm probably going to get a response back from a person, right? And then what they find out is that person is me. And they're like, oh, well, damn, the owner is sending these emails out. And then what I've gotten back in feedback was people were happy that they were getting the messages from me. That I took the personal touch in building trust. It's like, oh, because remember, if anybody's going to buy a product from you, that money, they are believing in you more than they're believing in the product. Right? They're trusting you as a person. So you want to appear a person. And that's obviously not scalable. Right? If we ever launch this as the actual Netflix of whatever, I'll have to automate all that stuff. But in the short term, when I'm dealing with less than let's say 10,000 customers, I can handle, a number of people that want to do that on a daily basis if that's what happens. Right? So that's one of the things you want to do to build trust. You don't have to do it that way. You'll make a lot more money faster in the short term if you automate it, but what I've found is that you will keep customers forever if you treat them that way. And lifetime value of a customer is often more valuable than just getting a bunch of money out of them up front. If you don't believe me, look at how real estate loans are structured, right? You think you're paying $300,000 for that house, but you're really paying $753,000 for that house over the course of 30 years. Right? They want you in the game much longer because they'll make way more money off of you letting you make payments than just getting a lump sum up front. Right? And they get to not only get that money from you over a longer period of time, they don't have to take a lump sum all at once. So that's a tax, that's kind of an indirect tax shelter. Right? Then they can also redeploy that money into other areas that makes them more money on the money you're bringing in, right? Monthly or however you're making your payments. Right, and so forth and so on. But yeah, lifetime value of the customer should be your focus. Are you going to do all 22 laws tonight? I don't think so. But that's cool. You guys can go read the book. Wherever we stop, you guys can just pick up this book. I think it says it cost me $7, but I think it was cheaper than that at a used bookstore in my old neighborhood where I used to live. And truthfully, you could probably just Google these 22 laws and read about them if you don't want to buy the book. My man Nick says, it's lit, fam. Yes, it is, brother. It's always lit when you're here, brah. What's the correlation to marketing being that what we think we perceive to that of the Matrix scene where dude is eating the steak and saying, oh, ignorance is bliss. We're talking about Cypher. And so crazy that you asked that question because a video I have coming out on Monday is doing I'm doing a talk on one of the scenes from The Matrix. Not that scene. I don't want to spoil for you guys what scene it is, but it's one of my favorite scenes in the movie. So the correlation of ignorance is bliss and marketing. And so a really good connection that I could make between those scenes is what I've been preaching about in the news. Right? I've been telling people on the internet for years to turn the news off. And the reason why is, I've owned a media company. I've worked in media. I've worked with a lot of these news people. I've been interviewed by some of these news people. I had a situation where I had to do a congressional testimony back in 2007 for some stuff that went down when I was the COO of that company. And constituents were pissed about some experience they had in my business or the business that I was running. And so, it was decided at a level above me, hey, we're going to send the operations chief there to do the talk because he's most read in on the problem, right? Because they could have called the owner to Congress, the billionaire, and by the way, he was there, but nobody knew who he was. He was sitting not directly behind me, but he was in the room, but nobody knew him. So I was like, just play it off and don't talk to me because people will figure it out. And so I'm doing the testimony to these young constituents that think I'm basically the Antichrist for what they believe to be security procedures that were too harsh. Right. And so I'm in there getting yelled at by a bunch of Congress people. And it was a dog and pony show. It was total bullshit, to be honest with you. It's where my biased opinion of politicians really started to get formed, is working on, Capitol Hill and just seeing how the circus runs. But anyway, as I'm coming out, Fox News jumps me in the hallway, cameras and lights in my face. And they're like, so, well, how did you feel about, because the Fox News guy is the one who actually started the uproar. The whole thing of us landing at Congress started with the local Fox News channel here. And so cameras and lights in my face, and what they're expecting from me is, because he's asking these really kind of like prodding questions, like trying to piss me off, because that makes for good television. It makes for great television if you could piss the guy off that just got his ass handed to him in a congressional hearing, where literally the congresswoman was yelling at me, and it was just like, all right, I remember just turning off my microphone and saying, please continue with this public ass whooping so I can go home, because clearly you don't want to help solve the problem, even though the work I'm doing is keeping trains from coming underneath the building and blowing you the fuck up. You're going to treat me like I'm the problem. Like, okay, cool, no problem. I hope you get reelected with this dog and pony bullshit you're doing for your constituents. I don't sound biased towards politicians. Maybe I'm not making my point clear, but the Fox News guys jumped me in the hallway, and one of the young people who was part of the constituency that was angry with me, she and I are having a dialogue. Like, hey, listen, I really tried to solve this with you guys without bringing it to this. But when you deal with narcissists, okay, and this is why I talk a lot about psychology. When you're dealing with narcissists, you give them a little taste of power and they're going to go nuts with it. So she was getting her 15 minutes of fame at our expense, and she was okay with that. Anyway, Fox News in my face. So, Mr. Chambers, how do you feel about, that didn't really go your way in there? Are you angry that the congresswoman wouldn't hear you out? And I was like, well, here's the deal. The fact of the matter is, and I'm just this calm. Now, inside, I'm pissed, but I'm calm. Like, listen, the facts of the matter are, what's really unfortunate is that what the congresswoman was upset about and wanted me to fix, as a leader, this isn't my first rodeo. Like, I already fixed it before I came to Congress. I already did it. I wouldn't come here to talk to these people knowing that we did have some internal challenges with the training of my staff. Of course I retrained them. And what I was trying to tell her before she cut me off and started yelling at me, because that makes for good TV and it makes constituents that are mad at me cheer for her, was, listen, everything you're asking me for, I have. When we're done with this hearing, I will go get you the documentation from our building, and I will hand deliver it, ma'am, to your office to show you that we have done our due diligence to fix the part of the problem that I do own up to. That's on me. But I didn't get that far. I got screamed at. I said, and honestly, Patrick was the guy's name, I just wish she had given me the opportunity to say that. Because what she said she wanted in this hearing was for all of us to talk about a solution that we could all come to. I said, and unfortunately, we didn't get to tell that part of the story because she immediately was angry, and I can understand. And I was very empathetic. What he was trying to draw out of me was angry black man. Right now, you would think that gets filmed, it gets aired on the news that night, and everyone sees the story and is like, oh, okay, maybe it's not what we thought. My part of that interview never aired because it didn't make for good TV, right? So people believe what they want to believe, just like Cypher did in that scene where he can't accept real reality, and that is most human beings. Most human beings can't accept that there is real suffering in the world because we just try to drown ourselves with Netflix or entertainment or substances to try to hope that we can hide from this reality. But those of us who've had to see death up front, close and personal, we see the real world for what it is. And when you try to come back to other people like Morpheus did and try to show them the truth, that's when Cypher was like, if he would have told us from the beginning, Trinity, we would have told him to shove that red pill up his ass, right? because he could not accept that reality was this way, because he wanted the illusion, he wanted the dream. And so people go to their corners, they watch their favorite news productions, and they get fed the same echo chamber bullshit that they already believe in, right? So commitment, consistency, bias means I don't read books, I come up with my own opinions, and then I only read books that support what I believe, right? And so that's why I don't just read the Bible. I read the Bhagavad Gita. I read the Quran because I want to hear these other perspectives, because I'm not afraid of ideas that may challenge something that I hold as a reality or truth. And the correlation there is in your marketing. And I heard somebody say this on my stream earlier today. They're like, when you're working with a customer, give them what they need, not what they want. And that's actually backwards. Because unless you can take them on the journey in their mind to help them understand that the thing they need gets them to the thing they want, you're going to lose that sale. Like, I understood what that person meant, which was we should get them to live in reality, but nobody does, right? All clients lie about how well their businesses are doing to their consultants because it's an ego thing. And so we would rather have ignorance is bliss. Like, I want my company, and it's like, if I'm selling a solution to somebody, I can't just say, no, that's not what you need. Like, you want this, but what you really need is this. Well, I just completely didn't give merit to this, even if what they want is ridiculous. And you'll see this a lot. If any of you ever consult with the government, you will see it all the time. I've never seen a group of people that are more in denial about reality and how to actually get shit done than government organizations. It's freaking hilarious. But you can't sell them what they need. You have to sell them what they want. And what they want is usually tied to ego. And so, yeah, I think there's definite correlations. Cypher perfectly represents the average human being who sees a taste of reality, doesn't like what they see, and wants to go back to the dream world that he was living in. And if you don't make a product that reaches him in that dream world, in my Social Media Master University, I have a course about bridging the gap, where I draw all these stick figures on the board, and they're all inside of a circle. And I say, we're all in our circle, even the people selling stuff. And if you can't tell this person something that's already, that if you can't take your product or service and put it in terms that they understand that already exist in their bubble, they're never going to pay attention to you. And that's the thing. Cypher represents that cowardly part of everybody's humanity, where it's, I just want the dream, put me back in the machine and make me rich and famous. Like, I would rather be plugged into this lie than live on the Nebuchadnezzar and eat slop. But the eating slop is the only true freedom. And most customers don't want freedom. That's why a lot of these people you see on the internet making tons of money are selling bullshit to people. Like, oh, you want to get six-pack abs in 20 minutes? Here you go. Here's how I got six-pack abs. Completely discounting the fact that the dude making that video is 22 years old. Completely discounting the fact that genetically, and I'm not saying that dude doesn't work. He does, but if you believe he's eating 417 pieces of sushi and 19 chickens every single day and he's still got six-pack abs, it's ridiculous. It's completely ridiculous. But people buy into that because most people want an easy solution to their problems. So that's how I see it. Hopefully that had some semblance of being coherent, because I was all over the place. But that was a great question, man. Thank you for asking that. Xavier says, is my first time on YouTube chat. Sweet, man. Coco Chanel. Yes. Okay, sweet. Xavier says, I want to start a merchandising line, and I have a couple of samples of my logo. Okay. Xavier goes on to say, either 2/3 or 3/4 of the proceeds will go to soldiers transitioning to civilian life. Okay, cool. Chanel says, Mac made it complicated for musical software. Yeah, which is why PC was easier. Yeah, for a time, Mac was easier because PCs had huge latency problems, especially like with recording with analog equipment. PCs used to struggle, but then eventually software came out and fixed all that. So that was like the short time. It was like around 2009 to 2012, Macs were killing it, and then PCs caught up. Xavier says, and I like what you do helping combat veterans to transition. AJS says FileZilla. Thank you, AJ. You caught on to the fact that forgot the name of the software. Appreciate you, man. Chanel says, I was saying how everything is fabricated now. You can't trust anything you see on TV, including the news. Well, here's the thing. You never could trust the news. It's just there's more of it now. So they could get away with saying stupidity because, one, you couldn't fact check them back in the day. There was no internet, but the news went off at 11 o'clock and you went to watch other things. Now the news is on 24/7. And it's funny. You can tell the news is shady by just pay attention to what time you're watching it and then look at the ads. Watch CNN at 10:30 a.m. and every single ad's going to be for Viagra, AARP. It's for old white people. Or just old people, period. Right? It's clearly you're making content to get people to buy stuff. It's hilarious. Yeah. Chanel says, purposely picking you apart for views. Good old TV host. Yep. NJ says, so glad to hear someone actually think. Most don't these days. Thanks, man. Yeah, bless you, bro. That was a great question. And I can't really take credit for it. I tell people all the time, like, why do you read so much? How did you develop all this stuff? I said, I was in a place where people were trying to kill me and I had to know a lot of shit and be able to think critically. Like, I'm not special. I will remind everybody that I was a C student in school. I was not academics. As soon as I finished college, I was like, I'm never coming back to this nonsense. Are you kidding me? Like, you should get a master's degree. I would rather wrestle a bear with rabies than go get an effing master's degree. Like, no thank you. All right, law number 6. Nick says the news feels like a drawn out ad. That is a great way to describe it. And the news uses fear and anger to get you. By the way, pro tip for marketing to men, raise their testosterone, you get them to make an impulse purchase. That's why CNN tries to make everybody angry and Fox News tries to make everybody angry. Because it's mostly the dudes watching it angry, and then they're going to show you an ad for a thing that you want. You're going to be so hot, and then you're going to be more inclined. It's also why sex sells, by the way. It's intended to raise a man's testosterone, which makes him more impulsive. Number 6, the law of exclusivity. Two companies cannot own the same word in the prospect's mind. For example, I'm going to FedEx something. Right? FedEx is a word. I'm going to Google something. You don't say I'm going to Yahoo something. You don't say I'm going to Bing something. You don't say I'm going to UPS something. Right? When a competitor owns a word or position in the prospect's mind, it is futile to attempt to own the same word. You can't change people's minds once they are made up. I don't really need to read much more of that. Some years ago, Burger King started down this slippery slope from which it has never quite recovered. A market study showed that the most popular attribute for fast food was fast. No big surprise there. So Burger King did what most red-blooded marketers do. It turned to its advertising agency and said, if the world wants fast, our advertising should tell them we're fast. What was overlooked in that research was that McDonald's was already perceived as being the fastest hamburger chain in the country. Fast belonged to McDonald's. Undaunted by this, Burger King launched its campaign with the slogan, Best Food for Fast Times. The program quickly became a disaster, very nearly on par with the one that involved Herb. The advertising agency was fired, management was fired, the company was sold, and downward momentum was maintained. Many people have paid the price for violating the law of exclusivity. I think now at this point, if you see a Burger King, it's either on a military base or in a neighborhood that's no longer doing too well. Just keep that in mind. There are no Burger Kings in my neighborhood. And I live near some of the richest people on the planet. Like the owner of Cisco lives not too far from me. So bear that in mind, ladies and gentlemen. All right, the law of the ladder, law number 7. The strategy to use depends on which rung you occupy on the ladder. While being first into the prospect's mind ought to be your primary marketing objective, the battle isn't lost if you fail in this endeavor. There are strategies to use for place number 2 and place number 3 brands. All products are not created equal. There's a hierarchy in the mind that prospects use in making decisions. For each category, which by the way, all that talk about Apple, yeah, Android phones still sell better globally. Just throwing that out there. For each category, there is a product ladder in the mind. On each rung is a brand name. Take the car rental category. Hertz. Go into the mind first and wound up on the top rung. Avis got in second and National got in third. Your marketing strategy should depend on how soon you got into the mind and consequently which rung of the ladder you occupy. You tend to, and this is going back to something I said earlier, you tend to have twice the market share of the brand below you and half the market share of the brand above you. All right. Now, the average human mind cannot deal with more than 7 units at a time. Remember that. Which is why 7 is a popular number for lists and have to be remembered, right? So a really, really smart YouTube gaming channel that I watch from time to time because it had one of my favorite personalities from back in the day. All of their lists are top 7 lists. Not top 10, not top 5, top 7. Right? So just bear that in mind. That's a nice little side note. Now, what I'll tell you about the whole Avis and Hertz thing, right? The second book, the next book these guys wrote, I don't know if it was before or after this book, but the bottom line is they wrote another book that I have on my shelf up there called Positioning. And in that book, they talked about, they go into more detail about Avis versus Hertz. Right? So basically what happens is Hertz is in first place with car rental and Avis is in second place. And Avis does all these campaigns to try to convince the world. Remember, you can't change somebody's mind once it's made up. Once somebody hates Trump, you can list 7 million things he could have saved a bunch of kids in Africa. You know, he could have donated blood to some dying person that saved him from blood cancer. Like, it doesn't matter how much good he does. A person that hates him is going to hate him. Likewise, a person that loves him is going to love him, no matter how much you talk about him being racist or grabbing women. If they love him, they love him. So what Avis tried to do, and this is why it's asinine to get into arguments with people on the internet about politics or any topic. It's like you're just arguing with yourself, which is usually what they're doing, by the way. Psychologically, you're trying to convince yourself that you're right. And the fact that someone is disagreeing with you causes cognitive dissonance in your brain, which is why you want to attack them, because it makes you uncomfortable. You attacking them is really more about you than it is about them. Anyway, that's a side note. Avis and Hertz going at it. Hertz is in first place. Avis decides we're going to compete with Hertz. We're going to tell the world that we're really number one. And they did that, and that marketing campaign went about as well as that Burger King campaign that I just read to you guys. So what happens is Avis actually gets smart. And they're like, all right, we're not going to be able to beat these people head on. It's just like if you're in combat and you're going up against a machine gun bunker, you can't run face first into the bunker where the machine gun is. They're going to mow you down. What you have to do is flank them, come at a place from where they can't see you, set up a support team, and fire at them from where the support team is from behind cover to get the machine gunner's attention so that machine gunner lifts and shifts to try to return fire to you. Then what you do is you take the other half of your team and you run at the bunker, throw a grenade in, blow everybody up, clear it, and you're done. Okay? So, that said, Avis figures out, okay, we're not going to be able to take them on head on, machine gun style. So they came up with this genius ad that it didn't help them beat Hertz, but it took their market share up and kept them competitive. And it says, you should choose Avis because we have to work harder because we're number 2. And so they admitted the fact, we're not going to try to convince you that we're number 1 because you know we're not. We are number 2. And you should go with us because we have to work harder for you to keep your attention. And that killed because they became real about their situation and people could buy into that. Okay, number 8, the law of duality. In the long run, every market becomes a 2-horse race. When you take the long view of marketing, you find the battle usually winds up as a titanic struggle between 2 major players, usually the old reliable brand and the upstart. All right, so think Coke and Pepsi. All right, in a marketing industry, third place is a difficult position to be in. All right, Jack Welch, the legendary chairman and CEO of General Electric, read his book called Jack. It's worth your time. I usually don't like biographies because it's boring storytelling, but Jack's is really good. Jack Welch, the legendary chairman and CEO of General Electric, said 30 years ago, only businesses that are number 1 or number 2 in their markets could win in the increasingly competitive global arena. Those that could not were fixed, closed, or sold. All right. So, and what Jack did was when he took over GE, one of the things he did was all the departments, all the different areas where they did business, he basically figured out if we can't be number one, two, or I think three in that market, shut this office down and reallocate the resources from this office to something else. Like if we can't be in the third slot and hold the third slot, we're wasting our time and money fighting for scraps. Get out of this market and go do something else. Right? And that's really, really wise. Most people would not do that. He also fired the bottom 10% of his employees every year, which is also really smart. Because then you get rid of the dead weight. All right, we repeat, the customer believes that marketing is a battle of products. It's this kind of thinking that keeps the two brands on top. They must be the best. They're the leaders, quote unquote. All right. Josh says, I know it's unrelated, but I always thought that CNN has a boring looking logo. Me too, man. 2.5, stay alive. For real. Josh says, also, concerning news, what of both local and news from public channels like PBS? So the thing that, hold on. Josh says, scratch that. What about news from PBS? Because I notice even local news say phrase things to excite people. And Nick goes on to say PBS is garbage now too. Wow, that was harsh of what happened to Burger King. Yes. Orange man bad. All logic goes out the window. Can somebody beat Apple in case of perception? Eventually, it's going to happen, right? Businesses' lifespans are usually 80 years. Here's another fun fact about GE, which is who we were talking about with Jack Welch. They are the only company that exists today that also existed when the stock market started. No other company exists from that time frame. So think about how hard it is for a company to even survive 50 plus years. Right, so eventually something will beat Apple because something will come around. Apple became Apple because they made a product of the time. Right? But someone else is going to make the product of the next time. It's just inevitable because what happens is when you become the big dog, you get really defensive. And now you're trying to defend yourself from attackers instead of being innovative and cutting edge. Eventually someone doing something cutting edge will outperform what Apple's doing, and then Apple will still hold its, it'll still exist, but it'll be like Sony. Like, what do they make now? PlayStations? Yeah, so I mean they're still the biggest music producer in the world, so they get those types of royalties. But going back to the question about the news, I'm not picking fights with a particular news station, right? Like CNN or Fox News. What I'm trying to help people understand is that the news is being presented to you under false pretenses. It's telling you that we're here on your side to keep you informed. No, they effing are not. They exist. Those people get in suits. Because think about it. If it was really, really, really important news, do you think someone's going to take, if someone's house in your neighborhood's on fire and it's going to also burn down your house, do you think your neighbor's going to take time, let me put on a suit, get my makeup on so I can get to Josh's house and let him know this important information? Hey, Josh, tonight at 11, understand why the fire is going to destroy you and your home. Stay tuned. No, if it was really important information, homeboy would be in an Adidas jumpsuit like, Ayo, yeah, there's crocodiles all over the city of Houston. Run. Like, they wouldn't go through the dog and pony show bullshit they go through. The news is intended to be entertainment. And it's intended to be entertainment for the sole purpose of getting you to pay attention to ads during the commercials that make you want to buy stuff, usually to quell the anxiety that they just gave you by talking about the coronavirus for 7 hours straight. You ever notice during the news, you see way more ads for anti-anxiety medicine and erectile dysfunction? They gave you all of those. I'm not saying it's like a conspiracy. I'm just saying the nature of the beast is the news has always been sensational. Always. And it's because human beings pay attention to things that are interesting more than things that are important. Now, in history, there was a time when the news wasn't so uh, disingenuous, whatever the word is. And that was about whatever year the saber-toothed tiger went extinct, that was the year the news was actually good. Because what the news was Reggie came running back to your village like, hey, yo, saber-tooth tiger out on the hunting trail. Just be careful. Like, oh, snap, saber-tooth tiger, we got to go the other way. That's both interesting and really important. If Reggie just came back and said, hey, everybody in the village, get together. Listen, I was out hunting, man. Had a pretty good day. They'd be like, Reggie, man, we were asleep. And me and my wife were getting it in. Why are you making us come out here to talk to you about nothing? That's not interesting or important. Now we live in a world where we don't have any real existential threats other than like an asteroid hitting the earth or some stupid person with a nuclear button hitting the button, right? But the news wants you to believe that everything is a national emergency that you need to pay attention to so they can keep your attention long enough to sell you shit. And that's why I say turn it off. And what I always tell people is, like, I have a neighbor that's like, yo, did you see the news today? No. Because for real, homie, if something really, really important happens, you're going to tell me before the news does anyway. So take it to the bank. If something ever really important happens in your life, like I've gotten more news about the coronavirus from the text messages from my family than I have because I don't watch the news. I don't even bother turning that nonsense on. All right, that's my point. It's not about what station it comes from. It's is that station funded by advertising? Then it's not news. And that's not to say that there aren't real journalists out there reporting things that are important. That's not what I'm saying. But if it's television news, turn it off. You can get way more better information from other places. NJ says, have you read Permanent Record by Snowden? I haven't, but I listened to his Joe Rogan interview, which was really interesting. I probably should read that. But I know his interview with Rogan was freaking crazy. Joey Johnson says, thanks. Corona will be your beer for Twitter. I saw your Corona beer video. That was hilarious, man. Josh says, funny that you use that example of the house next door burning down, as that is what happened to your next door neighbor a couple of years ago. Wow. And did you bother to put a suit on to go let him know his house was in fire? Like, the idea that someone in a suit with makeup on, a man wearing makeup, is telling me shit I need to know, that just sounds like a Shakespearean comedy. Like, humans. So brilliant and so dumb at the same time. All of us. Josh says, I was playing Okami and my dad let me know the house next door was on fire. All right. NJ says, I'm reading it right now. I'll keep you posted. Yeah, please do, man. Permafrost Beards. What's up, Holmes? On for a few, then guess what? Supper time. I know what's happening. All right, law number 9, the law of the opposite. This is a really, really good one. If you're shooting for second place, your strategy is determined by the leader. Okay? In strength, there is weakness. Wherever the leader is strong, there is an opportunity for a would-be number 2 to turn the tables. Right? And I don't even need to read any more from the book. Apple was number 2 for a very long time. And then they did an ad campaign called Think Different. That campaign killed because it flew in the face of what a PC was seen as this kind of nerdy brown suit wearing clown with glasses that, was not very interesting. But then the hipster with the baseball shirt on and, hey man, I'm Apple and I think different. Like, it's just being the opposite of what other brands are. So like one of the things when I started building online courses, for example, I'm seeing all these people, and I don't know a lot of them personally. I know some of them, but I don't know all of them personally. But I would see people selling courses online that were like, dude, you can Google that. What are we doing here? And so what I started doing was being the opposite. I started giving courses away for free. And even the paid courses I had at the time, I made so ridiculously cheap that people actually would email me like, dude, this is really cheap. Is this a scam? Like, it was so cheap they thought it was a scam. I said, no, I want to get a ton of people in this program. I'm looking to get 1,000 people in this program by the end of the year. And I think a real easy way to do it is to give you a ton of value. I do these really long YouTube talks, and then I usher them into one of my sales funnels or whatever, and just give them tons of value. And I can't tell you how many people came to me and saying, "Yo, I took so and so's course, and then I took your free course, and it was like, yo, uh, your free course gave me more information than the one I paid for." I was like, that's how we roll, man. And I learned that lesson not because I'm a good altruistic person. I learned that lesson because I first launched a book before I started launching courses. And so the first book I ever wrote, I was charging, I think it was like $15 for it or something like that. And I had people complaining, like, dude, you're charging money for this book, and a lot of the stuff that's in here is stuff that you already either put on YouTube or other people are teaching for free on YouTube. What gives? And I was like, well, you don't have to buy the book, by all means. Like, and you know my policy. If you're unhappy with the product, I will issue you a refund immediately. That's how I roll. But then I learned a lesson. I was like, wait a minute. Let's make something extremely valuable. The 69 Pillars of Success is the one I made. And let's just give it away. And I was going to give it away for like a year and then start charging $70 for it. But then I was like, screw it. Because that program led me to a lot of other opportunities that were far more lucrative than making $70 a head, that I was just like, I'll just keep it free. Why not? So yeah, sometimes being the opposite. Like I wanted to be the guy that was, because my thesis was somebody's going to give this stuff away for free eventually. Might as well be me, so I can get all of the trust and rapport for doing that. Law number 10, the law of division. Over time, a category will divide and become two or more categories, right? Let's see what they say here in the book. Instead of understanding this concept of division, many corporate leaders hold the naive belief that categories are combining. The way for the leader to maintain its dominance is to address each emerging category with a different brand name. This is why when I told you guys a couple live streams ago, I think on the TikTok side, why Microsoft talked for years about dumping Xbox and just making it its own business and its own brand separate from Microsoft. That's why. Because when you have a brand that does everything under the sun, it's just not a good idea. Like if you think about the way my stuff was structured, Bryant Chambers does the coaching stuff, right? The media company that I owned did marketing and sales and like web development consultation. Those are two separate entities, right? Even though they're the same person, they're two separate. Like when you go to the Bryant Chambers Media company, you are looking for something very different than when you contact Bryant Chambers. You see what I mean? So that was on purpose, that those things are separate. Because if I rattled off a list of all the things I do, it would be like, dang, he does all that. No, I got a media company that does this. I have a personal brand that does these things over here, et cetera, et cetera. Like I have a gaming brand that I'm going to be building, hopefully down the road, in the not too distant future when I get, because right now I'm not doing anything. I'm just focused on my health and going to doctor's appointments and stuff like that. I come and do these live streams here just to, because it's one of the things my doctor said I could do because it's good for me and it's kind of like therapy talking to you guys. But like I don't have the media company. I took what I was doing there and either handed it off to other people or just kind of put things on hold until I got fully healthy. But the point there is splitting those things up. I have a gaming brand that I'm going to be creating, and I'll tell you the name of it. Like, here's another thing too. Don't get so married to your ideas that you're afraid to talk to people about them, because if your idea is that easy to copy, it's probably not a great idea. And I need to look this up to make sure someone doesn't already have it trademarked. But I have a gaming company that I want to own called Succinct Games. Right? And the idea there, and that's very much Succinct Games is the definition of law number 9, the law of opposite. I want to do exactly the opposite of what modern video games are doing. Right? So modern video games right now are focused on being these Hollywood blockbusters that are effing. Kids complain when games are only 20 hours long. I'm like, what? Who has more than 20 hours to sit somewhere? Like my PlayStation right now is not even hooked up. I was joking with my friend. He wanted me to download this Call of Duty game. I'm like, bro, I haven't even plugged my PlayStation in since before Christmas. I play my Vita for 10 minutes before I go to bed and do like a little dungeon crawler thing where I just beat up zombies for 10 minutes to calm down so I can go to sleep. But it's the idea of Succinct Games is in the name. It's stop making these long ass games and games that, because my when I used to review games as a part of my media company back then, when I was more on the journalism and entertainment side, when I had that branch, and that was a whole separate brand too. A lot of you that knew me from YouTube, the name of that brand was called Alloy 7. That was a separate company, right? And one of the things I often bitched about in my gaming reviews and commentaries was that I'm not playing any games that were made after 1995 that are as fun as they are long. What most games end up doing is they give you a bunch of great stuff, usually within the first 10 hours, and then it just trails off into this long, arduous, nobody will shut the F up and let me just fight dragons, right? Just talking. And I'm okay. Like, there are games where the story is the focus and it's actually pretty good. The Last of Us is an example of that. I think that's a not so great game, but it's a great story that you're willing to put up with the clunky gameplay to get through what I think is a fantastic story. The Persona series, great stories. Too long-winded, but great. These games get really, really long and not fun for as long as they are. But then I played Nier Automata. It was like, oh, somebody does still make games that are awesome and not terribly long. Because you can beat Nier Automata in maybe 11 hours or so. I mean, if you do everything and get all the trophies or whatever, it'll take you 20 or 30 hours. But that's all I needed. And then, so that game goes down as the best game I've played in 25 years. Right? Oh, Nick looked it up. Succinct games not taken. So the idea there is, our motto is, our games are as long as they are fun. Meaning when we're sitting down at the table and we're getting ready to make a game, oh, we wanted to put this in. Is that going to create a scenario where the gamer has to play the game longer? Yes. Okay. What incentive are we adding to the game to make sure that the enjoyment level stays high enough for them to want to invest that additional 5 hours in this stupid narrative thing that you want to say? Right? And what I want to go back to is more like what games were in the 80s when I was growing up, and in the 90s when I was growing up. And it's just like, the president has been kidnapped by ninjas. Are you a bad enough dude to rescue the president? That's it. Or like Double Dragon doesn't even have dialogue. It's just Marianne's chilling on the street in her hooker dress, and Machine Gun Willie, that's his name, Machine Gun Willie. And then what is Machine Gun Willie's henchman called? Williams. Williams walks up, punches Marianne in the stomach in her hooker dress, throws her over his shoulder. Oh, thanks. Awesome. Thanks, Nick. I appreciate that. Throws Marianne over his shoulder, so you see her in her hooker dress and her underwear showing. I thought that was always hilarious. And Williams walks off with Marianne on his shoulder with Machine Gun Willie and the rest of the fighters. And then if you're playing two players, it's Billy and Jimmy Lee come out of the garage where the Camaro is, and they just kick ass for like 4 or 5 levels of just straight ass beating. And they beat up women and giant Chinese dudes. It's amazing. Like, and the whole story is, you beat all these people down, you kill Machine Gun Willie, you get your girlfriend's tied up on the wall like a hostage, and you rescue her. Now, I just told you a story. That's all I need. I don't need 20-minute cutscenes to help me. Well, last week at the Pentagon. Like, no, just that's a story. Like, and the game the game really only takes about 25 minutes to beat it if you're good at it, right? And I know a lot of people in the modern world, and what a lot of people don't understand is, games keep getting more complicated and longer, but they're not getting better. They're just getting longer and more complicated. And that's going to burn people out eventually, and it's already starting to happen. So here comes Succinct Games. Just make something that's as dope as Double Dragon and as succinct, but gives people so much fun. And then you don't have to charge $70 for this high production value Hollywood movie you just shot. And then, people can still make Grand Theft Auto and all that crap, or The Witcher. But dude, give me Double Dragon every time. Like, just Machine Gun Willie. Like, they didn't even... How long was the business meeting to come up with the names of the characters? All right, so he's got a yellow suit of armor on and a machine gun and a mohawk. What should we call him? How about Machine Gun Willie? Hell yeah. Who said that? Let's get this cat a promotion, right? So the idea of succinct games from a marketing perspective is flying in the face of like Ubisoft games that are effing never ending. I almost pulled my hair out playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey. God, that game's too long, and the freaking leveling system in that game is horseshit. And it was just like, all right, I'm doing something else. All right, the way for the leader to maintain dominance is to address each emerging category with a different brand name. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm in a different category now. But yeah, the law of opposite is our whole motto is for the love of games, right? Almost like for the love of God, right? For the love of games, please don't make games longer than they are fun. And Nier Automata is the only game that's a modern game that I have played since 1995 that is fun the entire length of the game. I can't think of another game I played. No, that's not true. Two Worlds is like that. Fable 2 was like that. I'm pointing to some other games I've played. Obviously, Soul Blade was dope. Um, Star Ocean, the second story on the original PlayStation, awesome, awesome, fun as it was long. Could have played that game another 10 hours. Had a ball, right? I hated Chrono Trigger. I thought that game was boring. I don't know why everybody thinks that's the most awesome RPG, but I don't need to understand why. It's not my place to understand that. Um, Permafrost says later, man. Permafrost says DM somewhere for a discount code if you don't. Oh, okay, cool. Okay, so I think no way I could play a video game that long. You know, I'll play a video. So Battlefield 3, 200 hours over the course of a year. 200 hours of my life went into that game. Now, I was also struggling heavily with undiagnosed PTSD. And it was just a great escape for me at the time. But that game was as fun as it was long. But that game is all action. I'm not watching cutscenes. Like I'm just playing and fighting other people and getting better at the game. Uh, Another game that was too long, but I still really like it was Ghost Recon Wildlands. It's like the only Ubisoft game I've played in recent years that I thought was pretty good. All right, law number. Let's see, where are we at? Law number 11 says the law of perspective. Marketing effects take place over an extended period of time. Chemically, alcohol is a strong depressant. But in the short term, by depressing a person's inhibition, alcohol acts like a stimulant. Many marketing moves exhibit the same phenomenon. The long-term effects are often the exact opposite of the short-term effects. Obviously, in the short term, a sale increases business, but there's more and more evidence to show that sales decrease business in the long term by educating customers not to buy at regular prices. And so I don't mean a sale like you sold a product, like putting your products on sale, right? You train your customer not to buy from you when you give them sales all the time, because then they're just like, well, I'm never going to buy it until it's on sale. Like GameStop has that problem, Steam has that problem, where everyone just waits for the holiday sale where everything's $1. Aside from the fact that you can buy something for less, what does a sale say to a prospect? It says that your regular prices are too high. You're basically, if you're willing to sell it for $20, why was it ever $100, right? And so, like, what I do to combat that with my courses is I always start low and then raise it, and then I explain to the customer, here's why the price is going up, and then customers paying the lower price, their price never increases, right? So you build trust and rapport that way too. In the retail field, the big winners are the companies that practice everyday low prices. Companies like Walmart and Kmart, which is now defunct, and the rapidly growing warehouse outlets. So obviously, the Walmart and Kmart principle doesn't exist in that same form today because this was written 30 years ago. A little it was written. This was written 27 years ago, right? 28 years ago. So the challenge is that Walmart example made sense 28 years ago, and Walmart's business model was predicated on having the lowest price, but that's because their owner used to get in his own plane and fly around the world and find cheaper prices. Right, but as inflation did its thing and then it became not so much viable for people to work at Walmart, let alone shop at Walmart, keeping prices basement low when things like Amazon are competing with you and can get it to your house overnight for a cheaper price. It's much harder to compete on price. That's why most people say today, don't compete on price. It's not sustainable. And that's why Walmart's had to make a lot of changes just to survive. And they've done some pretty smart stuff. But oh, here's something about Trump. That's interesting. It looks easy, but marketing is not a game for amateurs. Law number 12, my favorite one. One of my favorite ones to talk about because everyone's so guilty of it. Law number 12, the law of line extension. There is an irresistible pressure to extend the quality of a brand. By far the most violated law in our book is the law of line extension. When you try to be all things to all people, you inevitably wind up in trouble. I'd rather be strong somewhere, said one manager, than weak everywhere. In a narrow sense, line extension involves taking the brand name of a successful product, for example, A1 steak sauce, and putting it on a new product you plan to introduce. Right? So like when Coca-Cola had New Coke, that marketing campaign cost them big time. Right? So the Coke and Pepsi still do it because they have Cherry Coke and Coke Zero and all this other nonsense. But what they did kind of get smart about is Coca-Cola and Pepsi own all the other drinks, right? So for example, Coke owns Sprite and Pepsi owns Sierra Mist, right? I think Coke owns Mountain Dew and Pepsi owns Mellow Yellow or whatever it is. And so what they did was instead of saying Coke lemon lime flavor, you just make Sprite. And instead of having to make anything, they just bought Sprite. And now we have this other brand that sells lemon lime soda. And it's not associated with Coca-Cola at all. It's not taking away from that brand equity. All right. So that's line extension. I don't know that I need to elaborate. Invariably, the leader in any category is the brand that is not line extended. More is less. The more products, the more markets. The more alliances a company makes, the less money it makes. Right? And so they give a list here like you had Ivory soap, but then Ivory shampoo. Lifesavers candy. Well, how about Lifesavers gum? And then Bic lighters. What about Bic pantyhose? Chanel. What about Chanel for men? Tanqueray gin. What about Tanqueray vodka? Coors beer. What about Coors water? Heinz ketchup. What about Heinz baby food? USA Today. USA Today on TV. Adidas running shoes. Adidas cologne. Pierre Cardin clothing. Pierre Cardin wine. Levi's blue jeans and Levi's shoes, right? So those are bad ideas. What they would want to do in every case is if it's Heinz ketchup and they want to make baby food, they need to give it a different name, which again is why Microsoft for years was talking about making Xbox its own separate entity from Microsoft, because Xbox probably earns them the budget they use on straws compared to what really makes Microsoft money, which is business server infrastructure. The antidote for line extension is corporate courage, a commodity in short supply. All right, let's see. 1-2 Free says, what up? Nick says, law number 13. Almost there. We just got to 13. Says, Sean Prater says, what do you imagine that Travis Smiley is going to do concerning his... I'm not familiar with what Travis is going through at present. Why is his career ruined? What did he do? I admittedly don't... I know who he is, but I don't pay attention to news surrounding him. The law of sacrifice is law number 13. You have to give up something in order to get something. The law of sacrifice is the opposite of the law of line extension. If you want to be successful today, you should give up something. There are 3 things to sacrifice: product line, target market, and constant change. The full line is If you want to be successful, you have to reduce your product line, not expand it. All right. So I'll give you an example. I did some line extension a couple years ago. Hold on, let me read here. There seems to be an almost religious belief that the wider net catches more customers. It's absolutely wrong, in spite of many examples to the contrary. The target is not the market. That is, the apparent target of your marketing is not the same as the people who will actually buy your product. Go back to what I was saying about I target military vets who also want to be entrepreneurs or freelancers. Those two terms kind of overlap, but I just call it entrepreneurs. But obviously, in terms of the market, you are bound to wind up off the road. The best way to maintain a consistent position is not to change in the first place. Good things come to those who sacrifice. Right, so a couple years ago, I line extended my coaching brand to have a course not focused on development of entrepreneurs, but specifically focused on helping people build happy and healthy marriages. And me and my wife were working on it together. And I ran it just like I do everything else, like a beta. What I found very quickly is that most of the audience that I had, the entrepreneurs were like, I'm good. But the other audience, because I had started to attract a much different audience with this YouTube channel at the time. And it was not, when I built this YouTube channel, I attracted a very different audience than what I was shooting for. It's why I stopped making YouTube content, was because the people who kept finding me were not the market I was trying to reach. And so I was like, okay, regroup. I'm glad we kind of had a small blow up here, but I've got to cut my losses, right? That's obeying the law of sacrifice. But because I had all those people, I was like, well, a lot of them ask me all these questions about relationships. It's like, well, I can take my experience as a leader, as a minister in the past, and as a person who's worked with a beautiful lady to build a successful marriage and try to build a course for it. Well, what I found was what most people wanted from that audience group, because they were much younger than me. They just wanted tips on how, like, and I had one person, I'm not even going to say their gender. They were literally blowing up my inbox about some nonsense personality psychology that they were literally trying to use to manipulate someone they were interested in into liking them. And so what I found was I was building the building blocks of how to build a happy, healthy, and successful marriage. But what people just wanted was dating tips. And I'm like, dude, go watch TV. I found out that first I marketed it poorly. I line extended. And I realized that most of the people who were watching me weren't even, they were trying to get jobs. They weren't thinking about marriage. They were trying to get jobs and get laid. And I was like, all right, it was almost like that movie Hitch, where I thought, this isn't what I'm in the game for. So I'm out. So I killed it. Right. And then I ended up just giving the parts of the course I'd filmed, I just gave it away for free. I was like, here, take it. You know, and the few customers we had, we just, we cut off the payments and said, listen, we're good. Hopefully you're happy with what we did so far. And they knew up front that it was a beta. It may or may not work. And it was very, very inexpensive. So it wasn't like they were paying me thousands of dollars a month for something that, was unfortunately doomed to fail. Jeremy Ritchie says, I wear Levi's shoes. Sweet. Sean Prater says, how can he resurrect his career? PBS fired him on account of sexual harassment. Placement of the net will catch more. All right, so yeah, I don't have an answer for how he rebuilds his career. I am not in the image consulting business. He would probably need to talk to someone who's an expert at that. Let's see, the law of attributes. For every attribute, there is an opposite effective attribute. This law is cool. Marketing is a battle of ideas, not products. Ideas, not products. Your job is to seize a different attribute, dramatize the value of your attribute, and thus increase your share. I'm trying to find the part that I want to read to you guys. All right, so let's read this part here. Burger King was unsuccessful when it tried to take the attribute fast from McDonald's. What should Burger King have done? Use the opposite attribute? Well, the exact opposite attribute, slow, won't do for a fast food place, although there is an element of slowness in Burger King's broiling concept. Right? A single trip to any McDonald's should be enough to find another attribute that McDonald's owns. Kids, like I said earlier, they are crack cocaine for children. This is indeed the place to which kids drag their parents. And I have a little dude in my house that always sees McDonald's and asks me to take him there, which I never do because I love him. And McDonald's has the swing sets to prove it. This sets up an opportunity vividly demonstrated by the Coke and Pepsi battle. If McDonald's owns kids, then Burger King has the opportunity to position itself for the older crowd, which includes any kid who doesn't want to be perceived as a kid. That generally works out to be everyone over the age of 10, which, by the way, that is Nintendo's strategy. Right? Nintendo's strategy is to always make you feel like you're younger than you are. Like that's one of their taglines. Their idea is we know adults play us, but when you play our games, you feel younger than you are. It whisks you back to that whimsical, nostalgic period of your childhood that you love so much. That's why like Mario is so iconic, right? And he's a more iconic character than the most famous movie star, right? So that is the law of attributes, right? What attributes are associated with your personal brand or your business, right? What attributes are you using? So think about what sets me apart on YouTube and more specifically on TikTok. Well, look at the things that, or let's not use me. Let's use, let's use Nick's wife as an example, right? So I saw her art showed up on my For You page, but what I noticed, her first video that popped up, and TikTok is really good at picking people that you will connect with. I noticed the first video of hers that popped up in my feed was, hey, I'm going to draw you, which in and of itself, that's pretty cool. But what actually got my attention was, I'm going to draw you if you donate money to this charity who's helping people, I think, with the Australia fires. And I was like, that is a really cool person who's using their skills not just to make money, but to draw attention to a need in the world. This is somebody who would fit very well in my camp of professionals, right? So if you think about it, think about what sets your brand apart. Are there other artists on TikTok? Of course. Are there other more popular artists on TikTok? 100%. But her art was specifically being used to give back to other people in need. Then she went as far as to say, hey, I'm also going to draw military veterans and first responders, which I was like, that's awesome. So I started tagging a bunch of my veteran friends, which then she responded like, hold up, aren't you a veteran too? I was like, yeah, but isn't that cheating for me to nominate myself? Like, who does that? She's like, no, dummy. I was like, all right, fine. And then she drew pictures of us, which that's freaking awesome, man. And I actually used it as my avatar for a while. So you got to think about, yeah, and thanks for posting her name, Nick. Check her out on YouTube as well, friends. It's Madeline Janelle Art. She's dope. And so is her husband, who just posted that. He's dope too. But that sets her apart. So don't even think about, is her art better than this other person's art over here? Nobody's thinking about that part of the conversation. They're thinking about, wow, she's an artist. She's nice to people. She does these lives, but then she uses her art to give back to other humans. Like, that's dope. So like the artist that I have on my team is very much the same way. That's how she and I got connected to begin with. Was she was building YouTube content at the time to help people with depression. Now, watching her videos, it was really easy to pick up, oh, she probably has had challenges with that too. That's why she's so good at helping people with it, right? So it was, her motto used to be, always remember to share a smile with somebody because you never know who needs it. And anytime somebody says something like that, I usually know she needs one too. And I knew about that pain, right? In my creations, I was always talking about helping people take command of their lives and overcoming their fears, because I was riddled with fear and abuse and bullying. And I was a chubby little 5'3" kid. Well, actually, I was skinny when I was 5'3" when I got to high school. But I was this little kid that got picked on, and then all of a sudden I wasn't that guy anymore. So it was like, I know what it's like to be the underdog. Right. So think about when you're talking about the law of attributes and you're trying to describe your company to somebody else, what is it that makes you a good person that probably makes your company a good company? Because your company is just an extension of you. Right. Sean Prater says that's fair. Yeah. So I'd love to answer that question, bro. I just don't know. And I don't like to pretend to know stuff that I'm ignorant on. Like I don't need to, at least at this stage in my life, I don't need to be anybody's image consultant. I piss enough people off myself, let alone trying to teach somebody else how to get out of that mess. I'm trying to remember, there is a dope image consultant that I saw on YouTube years ago. It was the guy that helped Michael Jackson when he was in trouble. That's who, if I was Smiley, I'd probably hire the guy that helped Michael Jackson get out of a lot of hot water. 15, the law of candor. When you admit a negative, the prospect will give you a positive. Listerine, the taste you hate. twice a day. All right. So there is something powerful that way too many companies discount and don't pay attention to. And it's authenticity, guys. Please. Telling people about your flaws is a strength, not a weakness. All right. Too many people, especially personal brands, are spending way too much time trying to project to the world that they are awesome and amazing. Guess what? Most people in the world are not awesome and amazing when it comes to every facet of their life. So when you present yourself as this superhero human being that never has a problem, never sad, you got the hot lady, you got the Ferraris and the Lamborghinis, which I don't see myself doing videos with either of those because I don't think I can fit in those cars. I guess I'll need a helicopter and a Humvee at my mansion when I start making guru videos. Right? You got the big house, you live in a rich neighborhood. It's like, yeah, all those things are great, but we're out here struggling. And we like escaping watching your stuff, but I'm never going to really feel connected to you. Right? And one of the things, and I learned this in my coaching business, and this actually happened not too long. It was a couple years ago, right before I went into, started working with my doctors, getting my health squared away. I did a live coaching call. I don't remember the actual topic, but I told everyone that was on the call in this group coaching program, hey, I need to hijack today's call to talk about mental health. Because I was getting ready to go into the programs that I went into to start getting some help for, PTSD, and just, I also learned that I had depression and anxiety, which I didn't even know. And I argued with the doctor, like, how do I have anxiety? I'm the dude that would run towards gunfire. She's like, dude, that's not how anxiety works. Didn't you say you read a lot of psychology? It's like, yeah, but not the mental illness part. Like, I read all the evolutionary shit about why we're retarded. She was like, okay, well, you're retarded. You have anxiety. I was like, all right, cool. But the point is, I told them I spent the first 15 minutes talking about all these mental health issues that I had just been diagnosed with. And you would think that the intuitive part of your brain is going to tell you, don't say that. All these people that are paying you money are now going to respect you less because you have problems. Now, I've been in the game a long time. I know better than that. My first mentor, who I just got off talking to on Instagram earlier, telling him that I love him, first mentor kind of outside of my family. I was just telling him, hey, I love you, man. Thanks for everything you give. I can still call him sensei to this day. And he taught me that sharing your weaknesses up front builds the relationship, right? So I was in this church. I grew up as a heathen. Like, I didn't do church growing up. And so I started going to church in college because I got in trouble. I was getting ready to get kicked out of school. So I thought Jesus could help me. Real epic story. And I go to my mentor is hosting a small group because I left the church after a while. I was like, these people are crazy. Like, I can't eat Lucky Charms because that's a sin. Like, I'm out. Like, I'm not. This is some weird hyper spiritual bullshit. But my roommate kept saying, no, please, please. And so finally they invited me to the small group where this dude leading the group, who became, like a father figure to me, spent 30 minutes telling us all the parts of his life that he effed up. And I'm like, this is the first minister I've ever met that I can relate to, because I've done at least 87% of all that crap he just said. And I was like, I can relate to this dude. And so the intuitive part for your business is to make yourself look good, all these personal brands, and you got to show your abs on camera. And like, yeah, showing abs can help you sell a product to help people get in shape. But you know what helps sell that product a lot better? Show everybody what you look like, fat first. And then talk about the struggle you went through to get skinny. And it wasn't easy, and you didn't take a pill and get there, but it is doable for anybody because you were 411 pounds. That is because what you do when you share a negative attribute, like what I just showed you with the taste you hate twice a day, that shows, one, that you're authentic. More importantly, it shows that you are honest. And honesty is always more trustworthy. Every time I share a struggle, it builds a bridge and it builds relationships with people. Forget customers for a second, with people, right? Every person on that coaching call that day rattled off some mental health issue they had and was happy that they had a place where they could talk about it and not be judged, and then got to get some semblance of freedom from it so that they knew. And the reason why I was telling them was not to get their pity or their sympathy or their money. It was, hey, yeah, I got all these problems. Yeah, and I'm still kicking ass, like, regularly. I'm still an apex predator. And they're like, well, shit, if he's effed up like this, and he's an apex predator who has kicked all kinds of ass all over the world and in business and whatever, hell, I could do that too. And it gives people faith in themselves when you show that you succeed. Like The Rock did this recently, where he talked about being in jail growing up. He started, and I'm like, he just won another billion fans off of that one video talking about his struggles growing up. Negative attributes, right? Now you got to be careful, because you don't want to be like, I used to be a serial killer. Like that, don't. There is a limit to how much you should share, okay? But being honest about what and who you are makes you way more relatable than the person who's always driving around in Lamborghinis and never has any challenges, right? And just know, doing it the way I'm talking about will get you less sales on the front end. In the short term, you will get less sales than just spending 30 seconds on when your life sucked 30 years ago, but now you're amazing. That'll get you a lot more lower sales up front, but it won't generate lifetime value where someone's going to keep buying from you. When they know that they can trust you, that's when you're going to have a customer for life. All right, let's see. Squally says, this book is amazing. Squally says, B, you said this book might be a little outdated. What are some things about it that don't apply today? So if you're just tuning in, like I read, they were talking about how certain brands, I think the brand we were talking about was Walmart, was killing it. This was written in 1992, right? So Walmart is still killing it to a degree, but not for the same reasons that they were killing it back then, right? So, and I think some of the businesses they talk about in this book don't even exist anymore. So stuff like that, the principles are still applicable to today. It's just the specifics, right? The brand, some of the brands don't exist. Like they talk about IBM a lot. IBM still exists, but they're not doing anywhere near what they were doing back in 1992. All right, the law of candor. First and foremost, candor is very disarming. Uh-oh. Every negative statement you make about yourself is instantly accepted as truth. Right? So in my YouTube video from last year that made me over $20,000 at about 18,000 views, you do the math. In that video, I talked about I ran an ad campaign so good that Facebook called me on the phone. And yes, a number of people were like, you are full of shit. And I thought to myself, first of all, who lies about that? Of all the lies I could have told you, that's the one? It wasn't a lie, it was the truth. But people are more inclined to disbelieve you hyping yourself. And I wasn't hyping myself. I was just trying to say, this ad, if you use this strategy that I just gave you for free and taught you, you might get a call from Facebook too. And I explained why I got that call. And I explained to them, I think in that video I talked about what I told, because Facebook was calling me because they wanted insight. It's like, wait a minute, this ad is killing it, bro. What did you do? Because most ads at the time, they would rank your ads 1 to 10, and my ad was killing it with 10s. And so their technicians were like, okay, most people on our platform don't get 10s. Let's talk about this. What did you do differently that some of our other advertisers might not be doing? And by the way, we're not just going to ask you for input because that's not fair. We're going to give you some tips to get even better. And I was like, all right, bet. But when I share about having to leave the house yesterday because I was having a hypervigilance episode brought on by chronic PTSD and my kids screaming, I had to just run out of the house. Like, I gotta leave. I can't be in here with all the screaming. I'm going to do a follow-up video to that where I talk about sometimes I can't even have dinner at the table with my kids, and that's hard, man. But everyone believes that I'm telling the truth when I'm talking about how much I suck at something, right? That's important. Positive statements, on the other hand, are looked at as dubious at best, especially in an advertisement. You have to prove a positive statement to the prospect's satisfaction. No proof is needed for a negative statement. Since you can't change a mind once it's made up, your marketing efforts have to be devoted to using ideas and concepts already installed in the prospect's brain. When a company starts a message by admitting a problem, people tend to almost instinctively open their minds. Think about the times that someone came to you with a problem and how quickly you got involved and wanted to help. Now think about people starting off a conversation about some wonderful things they are doing. You probably were a lot less interested. First, your negative must be widely perceived as a negative. It has it has to trigger an instant agreement with your prospect's mind. If the negative doesn't register quickly, your prospect will be confused and will wonder, what's this all about? Next, you have to shift quickly to a positive. That's important. The purpose of candor isn't to apologize. The purpose of candor is to set up a benefit that will convince your prospect. So I spent 15 minutes talking about these challenges that I have. Then I spent the next whole call explaining to them why it's important, which was, yes, got problems and still winning. You can win too, right? The message was you can win too, not, hey, I got all these mental issues. All right, that's important for you to understand. Let's see. NJ says, what video is that? So it's I think it's titled How to Market a Local, How to Use Facebook Ads to Grow a Local Business or something along those lines. And so what happened was I basically showed everybody the ad campaign that I ran that killed it, so that if they couldn't afford a consultant, they could just take my notes and go be awesome. But what ended up happening was people who needed help would reach out to me as a result of the video and ask me to do it for them, because smart CEOs don't want to do it themselves. They want to hire someone who's good at it. So that was the video. I can't remember the exact title, but it's something along those lines. Squally says, made 20 G's off one video. Yeah, and I didn't have to have 20 million views to do it. I did it with less than 20,000 views. Now, I didn't make $20,000 that day, right? It was over the course of a long period of time, but it's not too bad. For a person that doesn't monetize their YouTube channel and teaches other, even creative people, stop monetizing your YouTube channel, because what has TikTok done? Allowed you to watch hours of video with maybe one ad when you first log in that you can still skip pretty fast. This sitting through a 30-second commercial that you want me to watch before I listen to your review for Final Fantasy VII Remake, I'm just not going to watch the video, because that's 15 seconds I could spend doing something else. And I tell people all the time, stop monetizing your YouTube channel. Find other streams of income, right? Because ad revenue sucks. Nick says, that's awesome, man. Even better. I'll look. Yeah, go for it, bro. I'm sure some of the technical pieces of that have changed because Facebook's always updating their stuff, but the principles are still the same. And the moral of the video is understand the audience that you're talking to. Because when you can hit all the notes right with the people that you want to talk to, and talk to them the way they want to hear what they want to hear, you'll get attention that way. 16, the law of singularity. In each situation, only one move will produce substantial results. Trying harder is not the secret of marketing success. History teaches that the only thing that works in marketing is the single bold stroke. Furthermore, in any given situation, there is only one move that will produce substantial results. The line of least expectation. Most often, there's only one place where a competitor is vulnerable, and that place should be the focus of your entire invading force. What works in marketing is the same as what works in the military, the unexpected. Geico commercials. This is before the Geico commercials, but think about so easy a caveman can do it. Everybody enjoys those commercials. Hell, my drummer in my band, one year we were playing at a school. No, I'm sorry, we were playing at a church not far from here. There's this huge mega church not far from where I live. And we were playing there it was a youth, like endangered youth show where they were bringing youth from, the inner city just to have a fun concert. And so they brought my band in to play for them. And my drummer is getting his equipment set up and bringing it through, backstage. And you just hear him drop, just all this stuff falling on the floor. And you just hear him say, "Not cool," which was the caveman, where when they're filming the commercial, like, so easy, a caveman could do it. And you see the caveman holding the boom mic, like, what? And he throws the mic down, like, not cool. Like, that commercial was that pervasive, man. That is unexpected. And by the way, the unexpected is what holds your attention on a show. What are these crazy people going to do next? That's what holds your attention. Surprise, surprise, surprise is always a big deal in advertising, Because the high cost of mistakes, because of the high cost of mistakes, management can't afford to delegate important marketing decisions. 17, the law of unpredictability. Unless you write your competitors' plans, you can't predict the future. All right? Yet marketing plans, implicit in most marketing plans is an assumption about the future. Yet marketing plans based on what will happen in the future are usually wrong. Failure to forecast competitive reaction is a major reason for marketing failures. Most of corporate America's problems are not related to short-term marketing thinking. The problem is short-term financial thinking. Good short-term planning is coming up with that angle or word that differentiates your product or company. Then you set up a coherent long-term marketing direction that builds a program to maximize the idea or angle. It's not a long-term plan, it's a long-term direction. Remember Peter's law, the unexpected always happens. I thought that was, now Murphy's law is a little bit different. One way to cope with an unpredictable world is to build an enormous amount of flexibility into your organization. As change comes sweeping through your category, you have to be willing to change and change quickly if you are to survive in the long term. Right, so like if I'm a personal brand, I got to be able to play on Facebook, but then when YouTube comes and disrupts that, I need to be able to play on YouTube. Or hell, you take my stuff back, it goes all the way back to message forums, right? I'm killing it with my own website and message forums. I remember at one point I'm getting 100,000 people on the website a month, which was pretty dope back during that time. And then MySpace comes along, so I had to learn how to kill it on MySpace. Then I had to learn how to kill it on Facebook. Then I had to learn how to kill it on YouTube. Then I was supposed to learn how to kill it on Pinterest, but hated Pinterest, so I passed. Right? Strategy. Sometimes the strategy is what not to do. Then Instagram comes and disrupts that whole thing, and it's like, I'm not a picture guy. Don't play there. Strategy, we're going to not play the Instagram game. Right? But then Twitch comes along. Okay, let's see if our old gaming strategy will work on Twitch. Doesn't. Divest. Right? The whole Jack Welch theory. Flexibility, flexibility, flexibility is the point. Right? Then TikTok comes along. You make one video with you and your kids singing army cadences and it blows up, and all of a sudden all the veterans that you've been trying to reach since 2012 show up overnight. And that's because we were able to maintain our flexibility. But we had to be flexible going back to 2004. So we've been at this for a minute, man. 18, the law of success. Success often leads to arrogance and arrogance to failure. I don't know that I really need to elaborate on that, but ego is the enemy of successful marketing. Objectivity is what's needed. When people become successful, they tend to become less objective. They often substitute their own judgment for what the market wants. Right? You watched Nintendo go through that when they launched the Nintendo 60 effing 4. One of the worst consoles ever made. Right? Then they tried to recoup with the GameCube, didn't do much better. Then the Wii, and then the Wii kills it. Right? Then the Wii U. You see what I mean? Like you see Nintendo win, fail, win, fail, win, fail, win, fail. You saw PlayStation do it with the PlayStation 3. So, in other words, don't let your success go to your head. Let's see. Nothing to gain from, let's see. I'm missing tons of comments. Let's take a comment break here. Nick says it's all, okay, I read that one already. Squally says, yeah, that's nuts. Nick says, B, I'm going to have Madeline reach out. Yeah, tell her, hit me up anytime, man. And I think I gave you my email address. Just have her email me, bro. I'm happy to help you guys out in any way I can, man, brother to brother. Contact at brianchambers.com, just in case I didn't give it to you. Sean Prater says, LOL, so it's best to reveal your vulnerabilities because it will connect you with your audience 100 effing %. When Tony Robbins gets on stage as Tony Robbins and he tells that story of his mother pouring liquid dish soap down his throat until he vomits, everyone that's been through abuse automatically connects with the guy on stage. Because, man, if he can live through that and instead of becoming a serial killer, he becomes this guy who's helping all these people, there's hope for me too. And that's why I tell people all the time, people think, they get in this head, I'll hear them say, oh man, you got so much wisdom. And yeah, I do. But then when they're like, you're so smart. No, I'm not. I am a C. If you put me in school today, I'd still get C's because I don't work well in that environment. It's not interesting. If you don't interest my curiosity or interest my sense of purpose, here's two things I can guarantee are going to happen. I'm going to have to overwork my own tendency to be mediocre just to be good. And in a school environment, I'm not going to fricking do that. Like, if you put me in school today, even with all the stuff I know and the wisdom I've developed over the years, I'd still get C's because it's not going to get my curiosity. If you put me in a job where I don't have an interest in the bottom line of the company and the values and the mission, you know, I won't be mediocre because, kind of my soldier's creed kicks in, but I'll be miserable. I'll be miserably great. And that is a lose-win. You don't want to do it. So yes, revealing your vulnerabilities is smart. Now, within reason, right? You got to find boundaries. I don't tell everyone everything about my life. You know, I tell my business partner a lot because there's some dark places I've been. They're like, nope, world doesn't need to know about that one yet. Um, but actually, I tell you guys most of the. It's funny because the stuff I don't talk about is more funny than it is dark. Like the stuff I tell you guys about is probably the really bad stuff. Uh, Squally says yes. Milk Duds back in the day exploited Snickers' weaknesses in movie theaters. Oh, I didn't know that. That makes a lot of sense. Pretty much ran a campaign saying they last longer than a candy bar. I do remember that. Yes. Great example, man. Nick says best games though, Mario Kart 64 and GoldenEye. Can't argue that. Can't argue that. Mario Kart 64 was dope. Can't argue that. Nope, no arguments there. GoldenEye occupied a lot of winter and summer breaks in my schooling days because my parents had the giant big screen TV that looked like a bookcase, and we could play it on this giant TV in my living room as a kid. And yeah, because I didn't own it. I had a Nintendo 64, but my best friend Patrick had the game, and so he would bring it over to the house, and we'd have friends over, and we'd just rotate with GoldenEye. Then we eventually got Perfect Dark, which was also a great game. So I do agree. Nintendo 64 did have a lot of great games. Or no, that's not what I want to say. Nintendo 64 had some really great games on it. I just wish they had more of them. But I've also always kind of wondered, like, should I go back and try some of these games that I never played and see if I still would hate them today? Because who knows? Yep, Blitz. I do remember playing Blitz. That game was crazy. Squally says Budweiser tried to make a barbecue sauce and called it Budweiser. They failed with the law of success. Absolutely. Broken Super says, "Hey B, I read the reason Nintendo had the up down is because they care more about gaming and willing to experiment and get it wrong in the name of innovation." So I think that's partially. I hate Smash Bros. I cannot play that. Nah, I hate that series. Hate it. I also don't really like fighting games that much. Like I grew up playing Street Fighter 2 in arcades, guys. Like I'm old school when it comes to video games. Yeah. Like my favorite video game of all time is the original Metroid. So, do the math. But I hated Super Smash Brothers. And mostly cuz I sucked at it. I didn't understand the nuances of how to make that game work, which is weird cuz I love Power Stone. And I can understand why I love Power Stone and hate Smash Bros. Because conceptually they're the same thing, but mechanically they're very different, right? What makes those games work, especially because Power Stone exists in 3D space and there's a lot more things to get involved with. So I would agree with that, Suba, except for with the Wii U. I think the Wii U was just stupid. it was They're trying to capitalize on the success of the Wii, but they know the Wii is weak. And so they're going to put out this slightly more powerful machine that, of course, does the Nintendo thing where it runs on their own proprietary shite that all the developers got to be like, all right, we got to develop the game completely over again to make it work on the Wii U. And it was marketed very poorly. The Nintendo 64 was stupid to use cartridges. It just was. Um, but I also don't think the Nintendo 64 was a failure. I, from what I understand, I think it did pretty well. Hell, I owned one, but it was also the console that made me stop playing video games. Um, I don't think the GameCube was particularly bad. I think that statement resonates the best with me with the GameCube and probably with the Wii. And then with the Switch for sure, because they're killing it with the Switch. The only thing I'm really disappointed about with the Switch is the games, man. They're not, let me clarify. They're not making physical games that I want. All the games I want to play are digital. No, I'm a collector, man. I want the case. I want the disc. I want the thing. I don't want to buy, the games I want to play digitally. Um, Perfect Dark was awesome. Yeah, I agree. Not a fan of Smash Brothers either. Yeah, I can't. I loved Power Stone. Like the fighting games I liked were Street Fighter 2. I really don't like that much anymore either. But Soul Blade on the PlayStation, which turned into Soul Calibur. Uh, Soul Blade and Soul Calibur are two of my favorites. And then Power Stone on the Dreamcast. Or in the arcade if you prefer. Those are the fighting games just that make me come alive. All right, so I think we beat the law of success home pretty well. Let's see. Squally says, "Yeah, the Wii U. Yeah, Crazy Taxi. I remember that joint. I didn't. Yeah, the transformations in Power Stone were so dope. It was funny. I actually used to play the Power Stone arcade machine with one of my NCOs when we were in the army together, and one of the places where we would train in the headquarters area, they had a bowling alley that had Power Stone, and he was the one that actually got me playing. He's like, "Sir, you got to try this." Like, all right, and we would go at each other on Power Stone. And then when he was leaving the unit, because he was so good at what he did, basically the army was like, "You're going to teach other soldiers how to do this, so pack your bags." Like I was really blessed throughout my short career to have like the NCOs who were the best at what they did. And as he was leaving, I gave him my Dreamcast for him and his daughter as a gift. I'm like, "Here's my Dreamcast. Here's Street Fighter versus here's Marvel versus Capcom 2, which is now worth $7 million. Here's Power Stone." Like I gave him my Dreamcast and all the games, which I don't regret. I was happy to be able to give him a gift, just tell him thank you for making uh, me a halfway decent officer. But anyway, 19. I think we'll get through the book tonight. Go buy Mario Maker 2. Okay. All right. I kind of fell out of love with platformers, but that game does kind of strike me as could be enjoyable. Jeremy Ritchie says, "Okay, I'm out. Never cared for games. Have a great night." Cool, man. Have a good one. Did you do the law of narrowness? Yeah, the law of focus. I did that one already. 19, the law of failure. Failure is to be expected and accepted. Too many companies try to fix things rather than drop things. Remember what I said about the marriage program I built. Instead of trying to make it more awesome and convince people to buy it, we just killed it. Right? Their consensus management style tends to eliminate the ego, since a large number of people have a small piece of a big decision. There is no stigma that can be considered career damaging. In other words, it's a lot easier to live with "we were all wrong" than the devastating "I was wrong." Right? And in that case, they were talking about the Japanese and Japanese companies. Sam Walton's Ready, Fire, Aim approach. I actually coach on that in one of my business courses. I don't remember if it's the sales course or the social media marketing or social media master university. There's a course on Ready, Fire, Aim, which comes out of Sam Walton's book, which is a great book. Marketing decisions are often made first with the decision maker's career in mind, and second with the impact of the competition or the enemy in mind. All right. So basically, what this chapter is trying to let you know is that big companies are adverse to failure. So is the government. When organizations get really big, they get bureaucratic. There's no way to avoid that. Um, and as a result, they play defense instead of staying aggressive, and failure is death, right? And so the whole Mark Zuckerberg go fast and break things doesn't work when that company becomes like a monopoly, right? They get way too cautious, way too, like, look at Google when they first started, and then look at Google when they're firing James Damore over giving feedback to a diversity course that he was just trying to let the diversity people know was statistically bullshit. He wasn't crapping on the course or crapping on liberals. He was just saying, and it was funny because in interviews he's like, "Dude, I'm a liberal." How did he get associated with the alt right? He was just saying, like, "Yo, if you want to do diversity, here's what science actually says." And I'll tell you, I've been a diversity executive. Some of that shit it's run by a lot of people who have a lot of opinions, and not many of those are rooted in any hardcore science. Now, don't get me wrong, I have close friends who are supreme diversity executives, and they get it, right? They understand the science and the cognitive science and the psychology behind what they're saying, right? So there are people who kick ass in that field, but when that field is run by a bunch of volunteers who are not being trained by someone like that, you can run into some serious challenges, right? But James Damore was just trying to say, like, guys, the there's a way to get to where you're trying to go, but the way you're doing it's like unconscious bias training. Like, the government's in love with that bullshit when it's already been proven. I think, fact check me because I might be wrong, and if I'm wrong, I'm happy to change the statement. But those courses are based upon Harvard Business School studies that basically science said was bullshit. And I've taken the unconscious bias training, by the way. I've sat through and I've done the tests. Like, I'm allegedly biased against fat people. What? No, I'm not. Ugh, it's hilarious. You're slightly biased against fat people. Like, have you seen the people I roll with? Did you see me when I was 276 pounds? I wasn't very fat, but I was freaking huge. All right, history is filled with marketing failures that were successful in the press, right? So now we're talking about the law of hype. The situation is often the opposite of the way it appears in the press. When IBM was successful, the company said very little. Now it throws a lot of press at conferences. Right? When things are going well, a company doesn't need the hype. When you need the hype, it usually means you're in trouble. Think back to the Clinton administration when they started praising themselves for dealing with the rising murder rate and crime rate. And they said, all the changes we're making in the cities with the cops, we're winning. And what economists showed was that maybe, Billy, but it's also very possible that statistically the murder rate took a jump off a cliff and started going down because Roe versus Wade was signed exactly 20 years before the days you were giving that speech. Meaning, since a lot of abortions happen in areas where people live below the poverty line, which is a hotbed for crime, by the way, it's quite possible, Mr. Clinton, that the crime rate dropped because the people who statistically are more predisposed to become criminals were never born. That's the law of hype, right? Whenever somebody's hyping themselves, you pretty much take it to the bank that it's maybe not going quite as well in the camp, right? The law of acceleration. Successful programs are not built on fads, they're built on trends. Like a wave, a fad is very visible, but it goes up and down in a big hurry. Like the tide, a trend is almost invisible, but it's very powerful over the long term. A fad is a short-term phenomenon that might be profitable, but a fad doesn't last long enough to do a company much good. The most successful entertainers are the ones who control their appearances. They don't overextend themselves. They're not all over the place. They don't wear out their welcome. Right? Elvis Presley's manager, Colonel Parker, made a deliberate attempt to restrict the number of appearances and records the king made. As a result, every time Elvis appeared, it was an event of enormous impact. Elvis himself contributed to this strategy by overdosing early and severely dampening his future appearances. Likewise, Marilyn Monroe and James Dean. Forget fads. And when they appear, don't try to dampen them. One way to maintain a long-term demand for your product is to never totally satisfy the demand. But the best, most profitable thing to ride in a market is a long-term trend. So this is one of those areas where when they talk about the law being immutable. In the social media world, maybe not so much. I think maybe the spirit behind these comments, behind what they wrote here, would still be viable, but it's almost like we've gone into the hyper real that I talked about in Simulacra and Simulation, where the opposite is becoming true. Whereas in Elvis's day, because there weren't 1 million Elvises on YouTube vying for your attention, he could get away with being and then not being around. In today's world, where there's a million Elvises, the Elvis that shows up the most, he's because especially like I watched a lot of my musician friends, and part of the reason why I decided not to pursue that profession was if you were out of sight, you were out of mind. If you didn't have a mixtape coming out like every couple of months, it wasn't that you weren't dope. It wasn't that your listeners didn't love you. It's just like they have so much other stuff to listen to that's occupying the dead space that if you're not constantly putting something that has great value out, you're dead to them because you're not around. Now, what I'm interested to see is the group that I'm talking about specifically is coming back out this year since they shut down back in 2009. Right? They stopped performing in 2009, and one of the members of the group went to managing artist. The other member started a separate band that's in a different genre. It's a great story. It's a great case study too for how to be successful long term in an industry where you're always an underdog. Right? These are guys that played with Kanye West but got nowhere near the publicity that he got. And so they're coming back this next year. Now, of course, I think this year they got another album coming out if it's not already out. Of course, I'm buying that. Matter of fact, while we're on this call, let's look it up and see if it's already come out. Let's go to Apple Music, dog. Um, they have a new, like the group basically all split, but now they're getting back together. And I'm very curious to see if coming back after 11 years, if they're going to be, if they're going to be able to build a, or wait a minute. I take that back. Yeah, that album came out last year. My bad. It was the end of last year when this came out. So it's already out, which means I need to listen to it because damn, I am slipping. I thought that was this year. Is this what happens when you have a racket, kids? You miss stuff. Now I just want to hear this. uh, so, oh, I did listen to this already. My bad. Yep. I did listen to this already. I was like, how did I miss this? But the point is, I need to look at some statistics to see if their comeback was like monumental. Like, did it kill? Or did they come back to obscurity because they've been gone for so long? Now, for people like me, who these dudes literally told my life story from 2004 to 2009, like I built such an emotional bond, and I've met these cats, man. They're really, really good guys. Um, I built such an emotional bond with the artists because the things they were saying, like they made hip hop songs about becoming parents and being an artist and coming home to the woman you thought was your wife, took your kids and bounced, and you came home to an empty house because you've been on the road too much. Now I didn't go through that, but I've been to war. My wife happened to stick around when I came back, but it's understanding the pain of that separation, right? And then when I started having kids and just listening to their stories of, oh man, I relate to these dudes because I don't relate to Thuggin and Hoen and Ice and I'm totally showing my age because that's like 2007 talk, but I don't relate to the stupid ass rap songs about moving keys and like a matter of fact, the leader of this band had a freestyle one time that kind of got him in trouble because he, hit like it went something like I wish, because he was talking about the frustration of finally getting a major record deal and then failing, and the record label crushed him, just got rid of him, and they lost a bunch of friends, and so he does this freestyle where he says, I wish Black Embarrassment TV would judge more wisely. He's talking about BET. He says, but I don't know what's worse, the fact that they ain't playing my shit or the fact that they don't even surprise me. So cause I ain't shucking and cause I ain't jiving, some of you brothers won't Oh, I'm sorry. Because I ain't shucking and because I ain't jiving, some of you, he says, crackers. He says, some of you white folks won't stand beside me. And because I ain't killing and don't support pimping, some of you brothers want to call me a Cosby. You could talk about Cosby back then. It was before the whole thing. He's like, some of you want to call me a Cosby. He's like, well, I'll be that dude. I'll scratch that itch. I'll play that role. Call me Heathcliff, bitch. If this ain't what you want, then fine. But somehow, some way, we got to draw that line. And and he talks about it goes without mentioning it goes without mentioning um that what did he say? It goes without mentioning. I thought about censoring this track so my label and managers would stay cool, but as of this recording, we ain't even outsold our first album. So really, what the f? What do I have to lose? Like we're losing already. Um, and that's like I related to that because I was at the time still making music, and I hated the music that was popular, and I've always hated well, since the 90s, I've pretty much always hated the popular music of the time, especially in the hip hop world. Not always, because, some artists like the Wu-Tang Clan were popular and Outkast, and I love them, but I related to them. So I'm really curious if anyone outside of me is downloading and listening to this and really getting something out of it. And so I say all that to say I tell that story to illustrate this book is telling you, kind of limit your exposure in 2020. I think that's one of the laws that you can't break, where I think, if you turn what you're doing online into real life work, yes, then this still applies. But in the virtual space, I think there is something to be said for pulling back at times and then being present. Like we'll see, I've been off YouTube for a long time. I did not come back to any fanfare. Like all my old audience was like, F this dude. I don't want to listen to him because he's not talking about the thing I want to talk about. Right. So take this law with a grain of salt is what I'm trying to say here. All right. Squally says, oh, I thought fads and trends were the same. No. No, no, no. Fads are like when kids were wearing their jeans backwards. Right. A trend is the internet. Oh, really, Nick? That's ridiculous, man. It's censoring. I guess it's censoring. Oh, dang! I missed something here. You guys are commenting it up. Let's do some comments here. Go buy Mario Maker 2. Roger Soul Calibur was baller. Agreed. Especially on Dreamcast. Squally says, "Did you do the law of narrowness?" Yeah, that was the law of focus. Nick says that's awesome. Dang, Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is collector's item now. Yep. LOL. And he got paid. What am I wrong? What's a big bias? Squally. Okay, so always remember to leave the context of what you guys are talking about. Squally, what was a big bias? What did I say that you think was biased? And then Sean said, "Oh, I see. You guys are joking about the fat bias. You're a horrible man, B." Wow, damn. Nick says YouTube keeps censoring my unconscious bias training comment. Doesn't like me calling it gobbledygook. I got you, man. I saw you when you typed it, when you spaced it out. Like, really, YouTube? Everybody's so damn sensitive these days, man. It's ridiculous. Because that's technically a racial slur if you're using it as one. Like he's oh god, the robots are gonna kill all of us, guys. It's just the way it goes. What the hell? They wore jeans backwards? Hell yeah. Go back and have you guys not seen TV shows from the 90s? Go back and watch some of the crap we were doing as kids, man. Now I know you guys were born in the 90s. I was not. So, it's some of you guys were just getting born when this foolishness was going on. But believe me, like some of you weren't old enough to speak and the internet was already around. Like I got started on the internet in 1993 as a kid. Right? I was on America Online. Actually, America Online didn't even exist yet. We didn't have it yet. We had Prodigy And you go on Prodigy and go on message forums, man. That's why I joke, like, I've been at the social media game since 1993, homie. Now, I was a kid. I wasn't running a business back then, but still. Josh says, I'm going to be heading to bed. It was nice listening to your lesson. See you when you stream next, which should be tomorrow night. We're going to do our podcast live tomorrow. Squally says, nah, I was born in the 90s. Says. Will make you wear your shit backwards. Exactly, man. Yeah. We don't wear jeans backwards, bro. Yeah. Yes, crisscross is who I'm talking about. That was in the 90s, bruh. See, I come from before AOL. I had AOL, but I had Prodigy, homie. It was Prodigy and what was the other one? Because I had a trial for the other one. Prodigy and something else. I can't remember the name of. All right, last law. Let's get this thing going. Oh, and to answer Nick's question, the group is called Little Brother. The newest album is called May the Lord Watch. And from what I remember, it's pretty dope. Because I'm listening to him like, oh, I remember this song.
Good evening. This is UPN President Peter Rosenberg with a special announcement. Percy Miracle.
Percy, oh yeah, because Percy Miracles dies on this album. It's freaking hilarious, man. And these albums all told a story. And like I have to thank this one kid when I was running. I used to be a moderator on the PlayStation forums back before social media. And this kid turned me onto it in the music forum. He's like, dude, you've got to listen to Little Brother and the Foreign Exchange. I was like, who is that? They're like, dude, all the bitching you do about hip hop, you're going to love them. And he was right. Foreign Exchange Connected, which, by the way, that is the album I don't know if you guys can see it. Yeah. So the album right, which hand is it? Is it my left hand? Yeah. Is it left hand? Yeah. This album right up here. I gotta wait for YouTube to catch up with me. Come on, YouTube. You are slow as hell. Anyway, this album right up here at the top of my bookshelf next to Iron Man. Well, not right next to Iron Man, but the one with the man and the woman kissing on the chain link fence, that is an album called The Foreign Exchange Connected. And the leader of the first mic from Little Brother is the leader of that group. And that is my second favorite hip hop album of all time. It's that good. All right. The law of resources. Without adequate funding, an idea won't get off the ground. Now, I don't need to read from this chapter so much, but the bottom line is resources. One of the reasons why when I've consulted in the past with companies with marketing, I tell them, and this isn't meant to say that I won't help them, but if they're trying to hire my company to run their ad campaigns and platforms, I tell them, listen, let's not even get into this discussion unless you've got $2,000 a month to spend. And the reason why is, one, you got to pay my fee so I can pay my people. But more importantly, I need to make sure we're feeding the machine enough money to be able to make the marketing effective. You have to have you have to have adequate resources to make ads work. The way these ad platforms work today, not feeding the machine enough money, you're just going to be giving it money. Like you've got to meet a threshold. And it's not to say you can't run a cheap ad and have some success, but if you're trying to get long-term predictable sales, you're going to have to experiment with a good amount of money to make that work long-term. Now, that's not to say, because a lot of companies, what I tell them is you shouldn't even be hiring a consultant until you reach a certain revenue number, right? This is what I was coaching Tony on the last couple of days. And like how to pick clients, where it's like, dude, I'm not, like, don't go to the one-man band and think that they're really good, unless somehow they're making $1 million a year, they're not going to be able to adequately pay you for your services. Now, there's obviously exceptions to that rule. And what I've done for a lot of companies that couldn't afford me that I've worked with is I've just coached them on how to do it themselves. And then all I ask usually in return, because it's usually just like a one-day session, or not even a one-day session, it's like a 1 or 2 hour session, where I'm just like, okay, I'll help this business owner if I like them and I want them to win, which is usually always the case. And then I just use them as a reference down the road. But don't approach, because like one of the guys I used to coach who was a YouTube entertainer that eventually became an actor. He was like, "Yo, B, I'm thinking about running some YouTube ads to get attention on my channel." Um, and he said, "Netscape." No, it wasn't. Netscape was the Internet Explorer competitor, or maybe yeah, maybe Netscape did have an online service. I can't remember. That's not the one I'm thinking of though. It'll come to me. But what was I talking about? The There's a lot of things that you can do in terms of marketing without having to spend money on ads. Like for example, getting a large following on social media. I didn't pay a dime in ads on YouTube to make the amount of sales that I made using my channel. I spent $0 in ad spend, right? I just used my time right here, camera to audience, to generate trust and rapport with potential customers and then put them into my programs. And then every once in a while that would lead also to a more of a consulting client for the media company. So you don't have to spend money on ads, right? And most companies I end up telling them don't hire a consultant yet. You don't need it. Like for now you need to be the marketer, and what I'll do is usually I'm just like, just let me use you as a reference down the road, or if it's someone that I consider a close friend or family. Like I ran, for example, one of my brothers, one of my military brothers. I just ran his parents. His parents were renting property. I just ran the Facebook campaigns for that. My mentor did the same thing. He was renting out one of his properties. He's my mentor, man. I ran his ads for him. Like like all the stuff he's paid for me and my family to do. I'm like, shoot, I owe you money. You know what I mean? But if you're going to purchase advertising, is my point. You need to make sure that I always tell people, Gary Vaynerchuk's argument is spend whatever you can. Yes, if you're doing branding, spend whatever you can. If you're trying to do predictable sales, where you can say, I put this much money into the machine and I got this many results out, I don't necessarily disagree with him. I would just say manage your expectations. What I'll usually tell a client that can't afford a consultant is, if you don't have, like, forget my fee for a second. If you don't have $500 a month to put into, let's say, Facebook ads, then don't hire me. Don't. Like, let me show you some things that you can do, because you're going to have to pay that $500 on top of whatever my fee is. Because with $500 a month, then we are able, because Facebook will throttle you. It's like, if you're not going to feed the machine, like, they're going to let you get in front of some people, but they're not going to let you nickel and dime them to make millions of dollars, right? And there will obviously be exceptions to this rule. Inevitably, some marketing quote unquote expert will show up and be like, well, B, I made $7 billion selling t-shirts, only spending $20 in ads a year. Like, okay, awesome. Awesome. But not everybody's selling t-shirts. Some people are selling uh, roof installations that can cost upwards of $15,000, and spending $10 a year on ads probably not going to get them a whole lot of business, because they're not going to get in front of enough people that are willing to spend that much money uh, just from a Facebook ad, right? And that would need like a whole campaign of building trust and rapport and getting them through the funnel. Again, always exceptions to the rule. Just before you start throwing money at advertising, think very carefully about, do you have the amount of resources to make that a good idea? And if not, what are some organic things that you can do first? Or what money can you invest in the short term to do more branding versus more trying to sell? Again, unless you're selling something that's just a hot commodity item, and you're just spending ads to get people to come to your website to buy because everybody wants it and you're the person that has it, that would be an exception to the rule. All right. AOL and Juno, that dial-up dubstep. Juno. I'm trying to remember. Did I have Juno at one point? I had Prodigy and, well, now y'all gonna make me look it up. CompuServe. That's what it was. Boom. Got it. Prodigy and CompuServe. Those are the ones that I had. All right. What's the most important law? Well, they're all important. The book will tell you that the law of line extension is the one that gets broken the most. Um, I don't know that there's a most important law. There's just a when you use all of them together, you're going to have a good run of it. One of the things, even in the law of line extension, what it talks about is, or the law of leadership, it'll tell you, uh, be a big fish in a small pond, then expand the pond. And their book positioning goes into more detail about, like some of the stories I'm telling you don't come out of this book; they come from their other book. Uh, them free Juno trials. It was Netscape, Law of Lion, whatever the F, line extension. Yeah, Law of Line extension. Thanks, Nick. Uh, but yeah, that's the one that everybody f's up. Squally says, if I had to choose the law of focus, a lot of companies screw that one up and it loses them a lot of money. Yes, very much so. Like Bud Light Seltzer is doing that. Bud Light Seltzer, good lord. Yeah, company. That's why I tell people all the time: don't assume because a company's big that they know what they're doing. Just look at how your government is handling the coronavirus. Don't matter much. Post Malone drinks your stuff. Bud Light will forever be beer. Nick says Post has sold more in Crocs than anyone ever. Dude is gold. Nick said words. Cool. That's the book, y'all. So you can go out and buy the 22 laws, the 22 immutable laws of marketing. It's such a I would have definitely made this the name of this book something different. But I'm allowed to say that in hindsight because I didn't write the book. I'm allowed to be a backseat Monday morning quarterback, backseat driver. Yeah, but you can pick this book up. I got it at a local bookstore used in the old neighborhood I used to live in. I was in there just trying to buy business books to learn stuff, and I found that, and I've used that book quite a bit over the years. Cool. That's all I got for y'all, man. You guys got any questions before we pack it up for the night? Still trying to find this combat soldiers part of this book. I have lost it because I read this book one of my years when I was in Wisconsin. We have the cabin that overlooks the lake, and I just would sit out, look at the lake, and read this book. Nick says, "Thanks, man. This was awesome." Yeah, brother. Always, man. I appreciate you being here, brother, and just appreciate you interacting, dude. It's always good to have good people around. It's probably no coincidence that the most successful novels and movies, such as Titanic, Gone with the Wind, and Avatar, contain patterns of intrasexual competition, mate choice, romance, and life-threatening hostile forces of nature. Hmm. Cool. Yeah, I love that book. Changed my whole mind. Yeah, man. Oh, so the book I just read that from is Evolutionary Psychology. This is a dope book. Pro tip: if you go to buy this book, find out whatever the newest edition is, and then get like one or two editions before it. You'll pay half the price, and you're not gonna miss a ton by not getting the updates. Plus, you can just go to the internet and look up what the updates were. It'll probably tell you, and that'll save you. Instead of paying $100 for that book, you'll probably get it for 50. Man, I need to start putting some of my books away, like a book addict. Sojourner Fathom says, "Thank you. It's been awesome." Yeah, thank you for being here. Nick says, "Got to get the snow." Yeah, thank you, bro. I'm going to go look that up now because I want to add that to my list. Yeah, get some rest, homie. I'm getting ready to go do the same thing. Squally says, "Thanks for this one, man." Absolutely. Sean Prater says, "The coronavirus is a private convo. Yeah, I can dig it, man. I think I know where you're going with that. Just hit me up on Instagram for sure. Oh yeah, man. You guys want to talk conspiracy? I'm all ears. Y'all need to do a podcast, man, so I can come listen to y'all. Cool. All right. If y'all don't have any burning questions, I'm up out of here. Should be back tomorrow night to do our live stream for the podcast. I'm still deciding whether I'm going to do that here or on TikTok. The reason being, I upload my podcasts after the fact here on YouTube, after I've edited the audio and all of that stuff. So